Chapter 974. Alright, let him go. Yes, Hen wasn't prepared to fight with Yang Chendong. Even if he wanted to fight, killing one of the enemy's commanders wouldn't boost his morale. It would only make the 5-star army hate him even more. He wouldn't do such a thankless job. Ding Shan left. When he left, he swaggered. Ting Shu and the other 2 generals were furious. They looked at Yes Hen and asked unhappily, "Leader, what's so scary about the 5-star army?" They actually wanted to send food to Baiming's surrounded soldiers. They are clearly our enemies. What do you know? The 5-star army has cannons. They have powerful cannons. Unless we can kill them in one shot, any blind move is just asking for trouble. Yes Hen recalled the scene from that night. A trace of fear appeared in his heart. So what if they have cannons? The Baiming army also has cannons, but they were still defeated by us. General Ting Shu said proudly. That's not the same. Yes Hen shook his head. In his heart, Baiming's cannons were too weak. Their attack range was also very limited. It wasn't like that night. He couldn't even see where the cannons were before he was defeated. Yes Hen thought highly of the 5-star army. Another general, He Lei, said unhappily, "Leader, are we just going to watch the 5-star army send food to Baiming's army? If that's the case, we will have to pay an even higher price to take down Sanbuchuan. Then what should we do? Do we have to fight against Baiming and the 5-star army at the same time? Let me ask you, if that is the case, what are your chances of winning?" He had also been angered by the questions of the other generals, so he roared back. This. Ting Shu and the others didn't say anything. They were nothing more than martial artists. If one were to look at them from a higher perspective, they were just fierce generals. When it came to scheming, they were far from it. Because of this, even though they were all capable of fighting, they still became Yeshin's subordinates. The 3 generals didn't say anything. Yes Hen waved his hand in annoyance. "Alright, you guys can leave first. Let me think about it." The situation of the battle kept changing. Yeshin's mind was in a mess. First, the stubborn resistance of the Northern Ming Imperial Edict Army exceeded his expectations. He used the 100 cannons he had seized and forcefully blasted a huge hole in the western city gate of Sanbu Lechuan. Then, the armored cavalry seized the opportunity to charge in. But even so, the stubborn Northern Ming soldiers still managed to block the hole and drive back the cavalry he had sent out. The Northern Ming army's fighting strength was tyrannical, and their willpower was tenacious, far surpassing what he had previously thought. Just based on this point, he could conclude that the commander of Baiming in Sanbuchuan was definitely not an ordinary person. This also added a lot of resistance to his original plan. When he couldn't attack the city, a second accident occurred. The 5-star army actually wanted to interfere and send food to the Baiming army. This was to completely cut off his path to attack the city. He was furious, but he couldn't do anything about it. He had long heard of the strength of the 5-star army. He didn't have the confidence to win against them in a one-on-one battle, not to mention that he might have to face the combined forces of the 5-star army and Baiming army. If that was the case, he would lose without a doubt. Forget it. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. So what if they send food to the Baiming army? In the end, Sanbuchuan is still surrounded by me. When the Baiming army appears, perhaps there will be a turn for the better. Yes Hen suppressed his urge to attack and finally decided to take a step back and observe the situation before making a decision. Yeshin's achievements today were all due to his personality. He was the kind of person who could adapt to circumstances. When he had the advantage, he would show his ruthless side. Just like when Tuachuo Buhua was defeated by Yang Chendong, he saw the opportunity and took a bite. In the end, he ended Tuachuo Buhua's life. On the other hand, when the situation was not good, he was very good at holding his breath. He was like a vicious wolf that lay dormant, only waiting for the right opportunity to suddenly jump up and take a fierce bite. Now, it was time for him to swallow his anger. After Ding Shan returned from delivering the letter, he went to see Yang Chendong in the beginning city and told him everything that happened when he entered the main tent of the Wara army. Yang Chendong listened attentively from the side. After Ding Shan finished speaking, he was not stingy with his praise. Then he ordered that the food could be sent. There was no news from Yeshen, so Yang Chendong decided to send the food. The commander of the new army, Tiger's Mane, was puzzled. "Young master, don't we need to wait for a reply?" "No need. Commander Ding Shan being able to come back safe and sound is enough to explain the problem." Yang Chendong chuckled. If Yeshen did not agree to the 5-star army's move, it would be difficult for Ding Shan to come back. On the other hand, it proved that the other party had misgivings, so he should take advantage of this time to send the food over. What was he waiting for? He did not forget that in a few days, the Ili army would arrive on the battlefield. At that time, the situation of the entire battlefield would change dramatically. Before that, the matter of transporting the food had to be done properly. Otherwise, it would be difficult to find another opportunity. Yang Chendong ordered, and 100 carriages were driven out from the logistics division. The Tatar division commander, Su He, personally led a division of men to escort them. This way, even if they encountered any accidents, they would not suffer any losses. Su Yozhen personally watched as the food was loaded onto the carriages. With these things, the nearly 200,000 soldiers in Baiming Sanbulachuan city could eat for 2 months. At that time, the army led by Governor Shihang would arrive and the danger of Sanbulachuan city would be resolved. Yang Chendong stood beside Su Yozhen. Not far away, there were a few officials from Baiming's Ministry of Revenue watching. All of this had to be recorded. When they returned, they had to report to the Baiming Imperial Court and report the details of the process. "Don't worry, there won't be any problems with the food, and no one will stop them. I have arranged for a division of cavalry to escort them. If there is a problem, more troops will quickly arrive. As long as Yeshen does not want to start a full-scale war, he will not stop them. But Brother Su, you can prepare to leave here and return to the capital to report," Yang Chendong said as he patted Su Yozhen's shoulder as he watched the carriages of food being transported out of the first city. "Okay, 6th young master, don't worry. I will go and make preparations. However, I still need Shi Wanshan to issue a receipt for the delivery of the food. When the time comes, I will arrange for officials from the Ministry of Revenue to accompany them. I hope that 6th young master can make things easy for me." Su Yozhen nodded. He knew that he had a more important task to do. After returning to Baiming, there was still a big hole to be dug for Emperor Daizong. In comparison, the matter at hand was a small matter. This is not a problem. But I have to remind Brother Su of one thing. After returning to the capital, when Emperor Daizong personally issues an imperial edict regarding my Bugnam of Gojoseon, when can the 5 million taels of silver be withdrawn from the Baiming capital's Yang family bank? Yang Chendong nodded and smiled. 6th young master, don't worry. I know what to do. Su Yozhen was very clear about his identity, especially after seeing the prosperity and power of the first city. This time, he was completely on Yang Xie's ship. The food supplies left the first city, passed through Saihan Mountain, and reached Sanbuchuan city very smoothly. Although they would occasionally discover Walla scouts in the distance, everything was as Yang Chendong had said. Yeshen did not make up his mind to act. In the end, all the food supplies were delivered to Sanbuchuan city. The Xian Mansion's chief soldier, Shi Wanshan, personally came out of the city to welcome them. After the inspection, he issued a receipt to the officials from the Ministry of Revenue. Su Yozhen left. He came with a mission and left with an even more important task. At the same time, Ili led the Li Kingdom's army to the Shaojing region. They arrived at Sanbuchuan city and met up with Yeshen's army of 150,000. Apu's arrival made Yeshen very happy. At the very least, he now had the advantage in terms of military strength. Thus, while he assigned the Li Kingdom's army a place to stay, he invited Apu to his tent to discuss the matter of attacking Sanbuchuan city together. Lord Prime Minister, you're finally here. What do you think? Let's do something big together. Right now, Sanbuchuan City is surrounded by my cavalry. It's so tight that not even a drop of water can get through. Yeshen still wanted to say something. A single sentence from Arab was enough to turn him into a mute. So tight that not even a drop of water can trickle through? If that's the case, what's up with the 1,000 carriages of food that the 5-star army sent into the city? This. Yeshen was at a loss for words. He did not know how to answer. Apu did not wait for Yeshen to think. He said, Lord Prime Minister just said that if we work together, we can do something big. I think that's a good idea. Since that's the case, let's discuss how to deal with the 5-star army. Okay. Deal with the 5-star army. Yeshen nodded. Then, he looked at Apu with a confused expression. Lord Prime Minister, you didn't hear wrong. We're going to deal with the 5-star army, Apu said confidently. Then, he strode to the map and pointed at it. Lord Prime Minister just said that Sanbuchuan City is now heavily surrounded. They have just been defeated and only have the strength to defend the city. They don't have the intention to fight outside the city. Since they're all cities, why don't we attack your city? That place is the #1 city in the Central Plains. There are countless resources and hundreds of thousands of slaves. If we can capture that place, I think we will get many times more than what we would get from taking down Sanbuchuan. Attack your city, but the 5-star army is in charge of defending it. There were also some people who hadn't understood the situation yet. So what if they're defending it? I've already sent people to investigate. The 5-star army only has less than 40,000 people. Compared to Wara's 150,000 cavalry and our Ili's 170,000 infantry, 40,000 against 320,000. I'm sure everyone knows who's going to win, Apu said confidently. Chapter 975. This was the decision he had made along the way, which was to take down the first city and inflict heavy losses on the 5-star army. If possible, capturing the Heavenly Khan alive would be the best thing to do. And he made such a decision not only because the Ili army suffered a loss at the hands of the 5-star army, but more importantly, he valued the value of the first city and the benefits he could obtain by taking it down. A true politician would never act on loyalty. Just like how Alip would not retaliate just because Kunsa lost to the 5-star army. If it were not for the abundant resources and slaves in Origin City, he would have endured the humiliation. But since he could vent his anger and obtain even more benefits, why not? Faced with Alip's bold idea, Yeshen's desire was also aroused at this moment. He had to admit that he was afraid of the 5-star army, but he was full of yearning for the first city that had already been built and played its role. If possible, if he had to choose between Sanbuchuan City and the first city, he would not even hesitate and directly choose to attack the first city. But is this really going to work? Yeshen did not answer immediately, and his eyes kept turning. Seeing this, Alip laughed and said, Leader, I know what you are worried about. The 5-star army is indeed very powerful, but because of this, it is full of threats to us. If we can't defeat them with the advantage of a powerful force, then it will be even more difficult to defeat them in the future. And as long as we can take down Yang Qindong this time, there will be no one in the grassland who can threaten us. Tuachuo Hua Khan is already dead, and the Heavenly Khan is also dead. Let me ask you, who will be your opponent, Yeshen? At that time, you will be the leader of the grassland. As your friend, we don't have any ambitions. We just want to snatch some silver and slaves back to the country to make the people's lives better. The Han people have a saying, if you don't look out for yourself, the heavens will destroy you. Since that's the case, why are you still hesitating? Take advantage of the fact that you just sold him a favor, invite Yang Qindong out and kill him. At that time, there will be no more demons in your heart, and you will become the one and only Heavenly Khan here. Apu's ability to bewitch people was very powerful. With just a few words, Yeshen's impetuous heart was moved. His face even turned a bit red. Clearly, the benefits of victory had deeply stimulated his heart. After a while, Yeshen's expression gradually returned to normal. Then, He began to think about what kind of practical problems he would face if he did this. Prime Minister, our military strength naturally has an advantage against the first city. However, once Baiming intervenes, they have nearly 200,000 troops and will still pose a threat to us. Please rest assured, Chief. On the way here, I have already sent someone to the capital of Baiming to deliver a letter and discuss this matter with their emperor. I believe that there will be news soon. At that time, this doubt will not be a problem. Perhaps the emperor of Baiming also wants to kill this loyal duke of the Great Ming that he can't control. Apu's face was full of confidence. Then we will follow the plan step by step. When the emperor of Baiming sends news, we will take action. Yes, Hen finally made up his mind. Although Yang Chendong had left him with too many shadows, now that their military strength was 8 times that of the enemy, what was there to fear? Good, then let's discuss the next plan. Seeing that Yes Hen had finally made up his mind, Apu could not help but laugh with satisfaction. Baiming capital. The imperial envoy, Su Yozhen, had yet to return. In the rear hall of the imperial palace, Chief Eunuch Jining had rushed to Zhu Qiyu's chambers with an anxious expression. What has caused you to be in such a panic? Zhu Qiyu walked out of the chambers of a recently concubine, his face filled with displeasure. He had originally wanted to spend some time with his beloved concubine, but now he had been disturbed. Presumably, no one would be happy. At this moment, Jining did not realize that he had disturbed a good time. On the contrary, he looked left and right. After confirming that there was no one else around, he softly said, "Reporting to Your Majesty, our embroidered uniform guard has captured a foreign spy in the city." What? Zhu Qiyu's expression instantly turned ugly. The embroidered uniform guard has captured a spy and is about to report to us. Do you all have nothing better to do? No. Knowing that he had misspoken, Jining hurriedly corrected himself. Your Majesty, this is no ordinary spy. This is a messenger sent by the Baiming Kingdom of Baiming. That person voluntarily allowed the embroidered uniform guard to discover him. He even brought a letter with him. Oh, here it is. Jining carefully took out a letter from his bosom and respectfully presented it to Zhu Qiyu. However, after a short while, Zhu Qiyu's expression had become very grave after reading the letter. As if afraid that he had misunderstood, he picked up the letter and carefully read it again. Then, he looked up at the sky and did not speak for a long time. Jining, who had already read the letter, naturally knew the significance it represented. Seeing that the emperor had not spoken for a long time, he asked tentatively, Your Majesty, how do you think we should reply? Who has read this letter? Zhu Qiyu did not answer the question directly. Only this official has read it. The other embroidered uniform guard brothers are not of high enough rank, Jining replied in a very certain tone. Us understands. Just pretend that us have not seen this letter. You can arrange for the messenger to leave as soon as possible. Zhu Qiyu suddenly said this without rhyme or reason. Then, he turned and walked toward the back of the palace. However, the direction was not the imperial concubine's palace, but the Qingjing Hall. Obviously, Zhu Qiyu's heart was not calm at this time. At this moment, he was no longer in the mood to talk about feelings with anyone. Looking at the emperor's back, Jining nodded in understanding. He already knew what the emperor meant. That was, he had agreed to the request of the Ili army's messenger to join forces to deal with Yang Chendong. However, Zhu Qiyu had just wanted to make Yang Chendong the Bugnam of Gojoseon. It was really not good for him to go back on his word now. Therefore, he pretended not to know anything and left it to him, the chief eunuch, to handle. The 3 sides secretly joined forces. There were all kinds of schemes and betrayals among them. However, Yang Chendong, who was in the first city, was completely unaware of all this. He was only wondering why the Ili army suddenly did not move after they appeared. They did not intend to join forces with the Wara army to attack Sanbuchuan city, nor did they intend to send troops to deal with him. As the saying goes, when things are abnormal, there must be a demon. This kind of sudden quiet situation gave Yang Chendong a very bad feeling. He did not like the feeling of not being able to control the situation. Worried, he increased the frequency of the scouts' activities in the Shajing area. However, it was a pity that there was still no useful information coming back. The news said that the armies of the Wara army and the Ili army were seizing the time to conduct siege training. It seemed that they were preparing to take down Sanbuchuan city in one fell swoop. They have more than 300,000 people. Sanbuchuan city is just an isolated city. There are less than 200,000 defenders in the city. Most of them are new recruits who have just entered the battlefield. How can they be so careful? Looking at the military intelligence in front of him, young Chendong could only shake his head to express that he did not understand. He still did not understand. It was now the end of July. In more than 2 months, there would be heavy snow on the grasslands. At that time, whether it was outdoor warfare or logistics, it would be much more difficult. It was impossible for everyone not to understand this reasoning, but why were they not in a hurry? Just what were they waiting for? Reporting. Just as Yang Chendong was feeling puzzled, the voice of the first guard Captain Xiao Vi came from outside the courtyard. Soon after, he appeared in front of Yang Chendong with a secret report in hand, handing over a telegram that had just been sent to Yang Chendong. Holding the telegram in his hand, Yang Chendong only glanced at it before suddenly standing up from his chair. His voice carried a trace of confusion as he asked, "The telegram says that Baiming's commander-in-chief Shi Heng led 200,000 reinforcements out of Jianghu Pass and suddenly began to slow down. Is this news true or false? When did it happen? Immediately send Wang Shan to investigate." The news had been sent by a secret agent of the security bureau hidden near Jianghu Pass. They had seen that Baiming's reinforcements had suddenly slowed down, almost stopping every now and then. Considering that Baiming was waiting for reinforcements on the front lines, this situation was very abnormal, so they had sent a telegram to inform the higher-ups. Originally, not long after the war began, Tulu city had been sealed off. Under the policy of not allowing anyone to leave or enter, no one had thought that the news would leak out, and no one had figured out what a telegram was. But no matter what, Yang Chendong still saw the telegram and understood the movements of Baiming's reinforcements. When he thought about how so much time had passed and how the allied forces of Wala and Ili had not attacked Sanbuchuan, instead, the scouts had sent news that they were constantly practicing the combination of cavalry and infantry when attacking the city. For a moment, Yang Chendong could not help but wonder if their target this time was not Sanbuchuan, but himself? This bold thought was just a fleeting thought, but it was accurately caught by Yang Chendong. What followed was a burst of shock and anger. Could it be that this bold thought was true? If this was the case, it was not impossible. After all, no matter how he looked at it, the benefits of taking down Shi City were far better than taking down Sanbuchuan. If all of this was true, then it proved that Wala, Ili, and Baiming had joined forces. Someone, go and invite Tiger's Mane, Shibi, Yang Si, and City Lord Yu Mian over. For such a big matter, even Yang Chendong could not make the right decision with just a telegram. He had to discuss it with others. Chapter 976. Not long after, the 4 of them were called to the Yang residence. In the small courtyard with the battle command sign, Yang Chendong told them about his worries. The 3 of them were so shocked that their faces tightened. It was obvious that the 4 of them did not believe the news when they first heard it. However, no one could be sure about politics. It was common for friends to be enemies the next day. When the benefits could sway people's hearts, anything could happen. We've just sent so much rations to Northern Ming, and now they're coming back to do us harm. This is too much of a beast. City Lord Yu Mian was so angry that his beard was trembling. It was obvious that he was angered by Baiming's shamelessness. Tiger's Mane was not any better. He punched the sand table. As expected, we can't be too kind. We were willing to take the risk to help Baiming, but how did they treat us? Even if those things were given to a dog, it would at least wag its tail at us. Sometimes, humans are worse than animals. Shibi, who was known as a wise man, said angrily. This person, who Yang Chendong said was calm in the face of danger, had a big picture, and was a strategist, could not help but show an angry expression. "Young master, just tell us what to do." Yang Si was even more direct. He was waiting for orders angrily. Yang Chendong was also angry, but he was more realistic. He knew that being angry wouldn't solve all the problems. What he needed to do now was to solve the difficulties in front of him and make more preparations before the war began. He shouldn't be cursing and scolding here and there. There was no practical meaning to it. "All right, everyone calm down. When it comes to anger, I am angrier than any of you. Now, let's talk about what we need to prepare. You Mian, you go first." "Yes." Suppressing his anger, Yu Mian quickly got into character and said, "When the origin city was first built, we had already considered the possibility of being surrounded one day, so we had already made preparations. The outer city wall is 150 feet tall and sturdy. It's definitely the type that's easy to defend and difficult to attack. Even if the outer city wall is breached, the moat between the inner city wall and the outer city wall is enough to withstand thousands of soldiers and horses. Moreover, the army has prepared enough food and fodder. There is no need to be afraid of being surrounded, and the possibility of being breached is even lower. However, there is no way to take care of the grain fields outside the city. We will be able to harvest in 2 months. If we fight to defend the city, I am afraid that we will suffer great losses in this aspect. Young master, can't we take the initiative to kill our way out? Didn't you always say that the best way to avoid losses is to set the battlefield in the enemy's territory? This time, can we?" Tiger's Mane's face turned red when he heard that the hundreds of thousands of acres of crops waiting to be harvested might be destroyed. The food in the city depended on this land for the coming year. There were also many people who relied on farming for a living. They were also waiting for the moment of harvest. If it was destroyed like this, it would be heartbreaking. "No." Yang Chendong answered in a resolute and decisive manner. This time, just the combined forces of Walla and Ili Ali alone are as many as 300,000 soldiers, which is more than 8 times the strength of our regular army. If we still choose to fight them head-on, even if we have to wear them down, they will wear us down. Whether it is Yeshen or Alip, they are not ordinary people. They are both experts in using troops. It will be too difficult to turn the tables in such a disadvantageous situation. Only by defending can we show our advantage. Moreover, this time, we don't know the situation of Baiming. If they also join in this war, then we will have to face more than 10 times the enemy, hee. Yang Chendong did not continue speaking, but the anger flashing in the corner of his eyes showed his mood at the moment. From the time he established Yang Xie's forces until now, this was the first time Yang Chendong faced such a dilemma. In the past, although there were people who had ideas about him, the difference in strength between the two sides was not too big. As long as he found the right path and the right opportunity, he could fight. But this time, in the face of more than 8 times the military strength, unless Yang Chendong used guns and cannons, it would be very difficult to turn the situation around with just the collision of cold weapons. Unfortunately, Yang Chendong did not have a cold front by his side. The closest was the Hai-Wu division in North Korea, but it would take at least 20 days to reach the first city from there. If there was a Baiming army obstruction along the way, it would take even longer. Distant water can't quench a present thirst. It would not work to put hope on them. Moreover, even if it was the C's 5th Division that came, they would not be able to defeat an enemy of more than 300,000 cavalry soldiers in a single blow. Of course, Yang Chendong had a large warehouse with him. If he wanted, he could take out a lot of firearms, but how many people would use them? And how could such a thing be explained? If only 1 or 2 weapons were taken out, it could be said that they were prepared in advance. However, it was impossible not to arouse suspicion when tens of thousands of guns or even more were taken out. It could only be said that things had not reached an irreversible situation, and Yang Chendong did not need to take the risk. Without enough firearms, Yang Chendong could only hope to defend the city. Looking at the 4 people in front of him, Yang Chendong actually had a smile on his face. Everyone, if a city wants to mature, it must experience a lot of things. It's time to test the first city. As long as we unite, there is no difficulty that we can't overcome, and there is no hurdle that we can't cross. We have to use facts to tell everyone that the defense line of the first city is strong. I'll leave the rest to you. Young master, tell us what to do. Tiger's mane patted his chest and said loudly. Sixth young master, give the order. Yu Mian, Shi Bi, and Yang Si also expressed their opinions in unison. Okay, I'll give the order next. You can supplement it at any time. Yang Chendong's eyes also revealed a very determined gaze. Order, the army guarding Saihan Mountain to immediately withdraw to the city. Order the world's 1st Cavalry Division and the Tatar Division to guard the road out of the city to the northwest to strictly prevent anyone from threatening the safety of North Desert City and other places. Order to immediately start a recruitment operation in the city, mainly the soldiers in the Logistics Division. Strive to build a regular army in a short period of time. I don't want to see my soldiers rush onto the battlefield and die innocently because their military quality is not good enough. Order the city to be under martial law immediately and use a method of relaxation on the outside. Anyone who enters the city is not allowed to leave without a special pass. Order the city to bury more mines beside the grain fields outside the city. If we choose not to take that grain field, then no enemy will be able to take it away. As for the people who grow the grain, they will be handed over to City Lord Yu. You will be responsible for telling them that we will compensate them no matter how much they lose, and there must not be any internal strife. Telegram the city to order the C-5th Division in North Korea to immediately reinforce the city. Orders were issued from Yang Chendong's mouth. The 4 of them kept nodding their heads in agreement. Regardless of the time, the 4 of them would immediately supplement if they thought of something. A preparation work for the defense of the city was in full swing. Considering that there must be a lot of enemy spies in the city, the 4 outer cities did not seem to have any changes. However, at the city gate of the inner city, everyone had already stopped going out of the city. In this way, they could also buy some time to prepare for the defense of the first city. 3 days after the meeting, the world's 1st Cavalry Division and the Tatar Division left the city. No one knew where they went. They disappeared into the vast grassland as soon as they left the city. For days later, a large number of mines and other things were transported out of the city. The new army's recruit division and the soldiers of the 1st Cavalry Division went out late and returned early every day. They prepared one trap after another outside the hundreds of thousands of acres of grain field, waiting for the enemy to appear and scatter the flowers. 7 days later, the Wara army and the Ili army finally moved. They suddenly gave up besieging Sambasachuan city and moved towards the first city. This move was a joint decision made by Yeshen and Alip. Just a day ago, they suddenly discovered that the spies they sent into the first city to gather information had not returned. This gave the 2 of them a very bad feeling. Although the spies could still continuously send back information with the help of gerfalcons, indicating that there was nothing unusual on the surface, the 2 of them were not so easy to fool. As soon as there was an accident, they thought of the same question. Did Yang Chendong already see through their battle plan? Where the problem was and how their intentions would be seen through, the 2 of them did not have the time to think about it. Since there was a danger of being discovered, they should take the initiative to attack. After all, the advantage was in their hands. The enemy at the 4 city gates suddenly withdrew. This made the Xian Mansion's chief soldier Shi Wanshan, who had been nervous, puzzled. During this period of time, his days were not easy at all. Although the soldiers at the city gates had not launched an attack, the nerves in his mind had been tense. He really did not know when the enemy would suddenly launch an attack. Every night, he would think about whether the enemy would launch an attack on the city the next morning. Would he be able to defend the city? That kind of day was more than just torture. However, no one would have thought that the enemy would withdraw from the city gates. At this moment, he actually had a surreal feeling. Deputy Chief Soldier Ancient River, Ning Wenfeng, and the army supervisor eunuch Deng Chang appeared on the city gate tower together. Seeing the enemy disappear from under their eyes, they were all at a loss. Everything that was happening in front of them also made them feel a sense of bewilderment. What do you think they are doing? Holding the battlements, Shi Wanshan seemed to be asking the others, but also seemed to be talking to himself. They are not pretending to retreat in order to lure us out of the city, right? Deputy Chief Soldier Ancient River's personality was straightforward and his words were more direct. Chapter 977. The supervising eunuch, Deng Cheng, was in a better state. He looked in the direction of the enemy's retreat and said worriedly, "They are heading in the direction of Talis City. Are they going to abandon us and choose another path?" "I don't think so." Deputy Chief Ancient River's face was filled with shock. He shook his head hesitantly. "I don't think so. If they don't attack us and go to attack Talis City, they will face the danger of being attacked from both sides at any time. Moreover, didn't the imperial court send news? Governor Shihang is leading an army of 200,000. If they go to Talis City, they should be able to meet them. At that time, we will attack them from both sides. They won't be able to gain any benefits." Ning Wenfeng, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. He denied Deng Cheng's worries. "Then why are they going there? If they are retreating, shouldn't they retreat to the south? Could it be that they are really trying to lure us out of the city?" Deng Cheng nodded in agreement. However, a new doubt rose in his mind. To the north, there is not only Talis City but also Beginning City. Ning Wenfeng's expression changed slightly. When he said the last two words, his face had already turned red. Although his possibility was the lowest, it seemed that this was the only plausible explanation. Ning Wenfeng's words attracted the attention of the three people. It was Ancient River who said, "Impossible. You said that they want to attack Beginning City. They must be crazy. The Duke of Loyalty is there. Moreover, Beginning City has high walls. How can it be so easy to attack?" "That's right." Chief Shi Wanshan spoke again. "Moreover, we are still behind them. If they attack Beginning City now, aren't they afraid that we will stab them in the ass and cut off their retreat?" A while ago, Yang Chendong sent people to deliver provisions into the city. Although it wasn't because of Shi Wanshan's face, and if he guessed correctly, it should be because of some agreement between the Duke of Loyalty and the Emperor. However, there was one point that couldn't be denied, and that was that nearly 200,000 of their soldiers had been saved. He had to acknowledge this favor. If Walla and Commander Ely really wanted to attack Beginning City, he could also lead the army to cut off the enemy's retreat and severely injure them. That's right. The 5-star army has helped us a lot this time. If something happens to them, we can't just ignore it. Ancient River nodded silently. It was said that the more straightforward a person's personality, the more they would know how to be grateful. Now, it was a perfect example of this saying. Send scouts out of the city. Rather than discussing it here, why don't we send people out to scare them? Seeing is believing. Ning Wenfeng's mind was still clear enough. Faced with a chaotic situation that he couldn't understand, he still decided to send someone to take a look. Only then could he get the truest answer. Okay, send out all the scouts. Shi Wanshan nodded in acquiescence. In his heart, he was also very curious about what Walla and the others were going to do. Walla and Ely took the allied army of 300,000 men into consideration. Jingzhou City and Shajing City each kept 5,000 cavalrymen, and when they attacked Sanbulachuan City, they lost nearly 10,000 infantrymen. They calmly left Sanbulachuan City, and in a grandiose manner, headed straight for Shi City, which was 1,000 li away. As early as the moment they started to move, the scouts of the 5-star army, who were already mentally prepared, received the news and then reported it back to Beginning City. Yang Chendong, who was having lunch with 6 Madame Wan Xiaoyu, only paused for a moment after hearing Beta Persei's report. Then, he continued to eat as if nothing had happened and a confident smile appeared on his face from time to time. Wan Xiaoyu sat opposite him and there was no trace of worry on her face. Although the number of 300,000 troops reported by Beta Persei had indeed shocked her, she was convinced that her man would still create a miracle this time when she thought of all the miracles she had seen after meeting her big brother. Through the Beginning City's Yang report, the news of the 300,000 troops under Walla and Ili Ali's joint attack quickly spread in the city. Yang Chendong adopted an extremely open policy regarding public opinion. At his request, Yang Bao even had a special current affairs column for everyone to express their personal views and opinions on current affairs. It was precisely because of this that anyone who had lived in Beginning City for more than a year seemed to be able to talk about some important matters regarding Yangxia. Over time, discussing the military situation had become a habit. It was no longer strange for them to do so. It was precisely because of this foundation that when Yang Bao of Beginning City announced this shocking news the next morning, the city was far from the panic that should have occurred. Some of the commoners originally wanted to buy more rice to store, but when they saw the piles of rice in front of the grain stores in the city, they no longer had any concerns. Only those farmers who had fields outside the city were worried and even sent some representatives to the city lord's mansion to inquire. Soon, they agreed. The Heaven Khan said that all the losses this time would be compensated by the 5-star army. After the war, they would compensate for the losses. City Lord Yumian also emphasized that these compensations were not provided by the Heaven Khan, but by Walla and Ili Ali. The city lord's mansion was just supporting them in advance. That's right, we're going to get Walla and Ili Belly to compensate us. The Heaven Khan is so good to us and gave us fields, houses to live in, food to eat, and hope for the future. However, some people just don't like it and always want to snatch the benefits. Since that's the case, we'll fight with them. We'll fight with them, but I don't know if we still need people to defend the city. I'm only in my 40s and I still have a lot of strength. Although I can't charge into battle without training, I can still help carry the kerosene and arrows. There's also me. I'm not even 40 years old yet. I can carry a shoulder and pull a bow. If you need me, I'll go up to the city tower and fight with these people who deserve to die. Count me in. My family has 5 brothers. Even without me, we can still live. If there's a need, we can go up to the city tower to help. Yes, it's free. We can bring our own food. In front of the city lord's mansion, after those farmers received the promise, they immediately felt that the 5-star army was cute. Returning the favor, each of them also showed their attitude. It was true that those who had money would contribute money and those who had strength would contribute strength. This kind of atmosphere quickly became the norm in the city. For a time, there were many people who requested to help defend the city. There were nearly 500,000 people in the city. Other than some children and the elderly, almost everyone else signed up. The number of people actually reached more than 300,000. When this matter was reported to City Lord Yumian, he excitedly told the news to Yang Chendong. The latter couldn't help but laugh out loud. Yumian, do you see that? This is the power of the people. Their thinking is actually very simple. Whoever is good to them, they will be good to them. In this way, we have more than 300,000 fresh troops. Isn't that much more than the enemy? What's there to be afraid of? Yes, the 6th young master is right. Yumian nodded excitedly. Previously, I was worried that the strength to defend the city wasn't enough. However, with the support of the people in the city, there's no need to worry. Ha ha ha. Yang Chendong finally saw the power of the people. At that time, with these people doing the logistics work, in addition to the new army's main force, the reserve officers and soldiers in the logistics division, as well as the captives and soldiers, he already had enough confidence to fight with any force. One had to know that not long ago, they had just taken in nearly 60,000 Baiming deserters. Just this force alone was already considered very large. Since Walla's goal was already very clear, there was no intention of hiding some of their actions in the beginning city. The outer and inner city gates were closed one after another, showing a posture of strict defense. The performance of the beginning city fell into the eyes of Walla's scouts outside the city. They quickly reported the news. After Yeshen and Apuli, who were hurrying on their way, learned about it, their faces were relaxed and at ease. Although the beginning city's actions were so fast that it was somewhat out of their expectations, They did not know if the Heavenly Khan was conceited or if they had no way out and insisted on smashing an egg against a rock because they wanted to stop their army of 300,000 with less than 40,000 soldiers. Yes Hen rode on his horse and looked at Apuli, who was beside him, and asked, "Lord Prime Minister, how should the current situation be described in the language of the Han people?" Apuli pondered for a moment before giving the answer. It should be called not knowing the time and things, or it can also be called a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Well said. Lord Prime Minister is indeed knowledgeable. By the way, there won't be any problems with the Baiming army, right? You have to know that our escape route is in their hands. There mustn't be any problems. Yes Hen laughed and said worriedly. Since the Emperor of Baiming has already agreed, he will definitely not go back on his word. What's more, in his eyes, we and the 5-star army are his enemies. He will definitely not intervene in such a good show. When it came to this issue, Apuli was very confident. That's good. Next, we will send troops to the beginning city. I heard that there are mountains of gold and silver, piles of food, and groups of slaves there. I didn't expect the Heavenly Khan to be a good person for once and prepare so many good things for us. Without any worries, Yeshen's face was carefree and at the same time, his face was full of expectations. Sanbu's Tile River City. The dispatched scouts reported back one by one. After confirming the fact that the beginning city's gate was closed and the alliance of Walla and Ili Ali was advancing step by step, they quickly reported back to the city. General Shi Wanshan immediately invited the 2 vice-generals Ancient River and Ning Wenfeng to prepare for the attack. They actually dare to jump over us to attack the beginning city. This is simply not putting us in their eyes. Since that's the case, this time we will show them our power. General Ancient River, I will give you 30,000 troops. Once the attack and defense of the beginning city begins, you will immediately lead the troops to attack Shajing City and Wenfeng City. I will also give you 30,000 troops to attack Jingzhou City. We will cut off their escape route first. Shi Wanshan's face was filled with anger. Chapter 978. He did not know where the other party got the guts to abandon him and attack the beginning city behind him. However, since there was such an opportunity, he would of course attack quickly in order to obtain more victories and greater victories. Ancient River and Ning Wenfeng, who were called out, cupped their fists and responded. Then, they prepared to mobilize the troops to attack the city. However, before they could walk out of the government office, they saw a group of more than 100 embroidered uniform guards surrounding the place. Then, the military supervisor eunuch, Deng Chang, appeared. What are you doing? Seeing that the government office was surrounded and the embroidered uniform guards appeared, Shi Wanshan's expression changed slightly. He looked at Deng Chang who was walking toward him and asked sternly. Ancient River and Ning Wenfeng, who were about to leave after receiving the military order, looked at Deng Chang in confusion. At the same time, their right hands slowly moved toward their waists. It was obvious that they were prepared to make a move at any time. Don't misunderstand. Deng Chang's expression did not change and his heart did not skip a beat. It was as if he did not see the reaction of the 2 deputy commanders. He faced Shi Wanshan and said, Commander Shi, I just received a secret order from Supervisor Jean. The Xian Mansion soldiers are not allowed to leave Sanbula City. Please do not make things difficult for them. After saying this, Deng Chang waved his hand to the embroidered uniform guards on his left and right and said, Guards, guard every path leading out of the government office. Without orders, the 3 commanders are not allowed to leave the government office. Otherwise, kill them without mercy. After the embroidered uniform guards in flying fish robes responded, they quickly occupied every path and completely controlled Shi Wanshan and the other 2 in the small courtyard. After everything was done, Deng Chang waved his hand again. Immediately, a few eunuchs brought out the good wine and dishes that had been prepared in advance and brought them to the table. Deng Chang was the first to find a seat and sit down. Sigh, speaking of which, I rarely have the chance to have a good drink with the 3 generals. Come, take a seat. With a face full of doubt, Ancient River signaled Shi Wanshan with his eyes several times. What should he do? Although it was true that there were embroidered uniform guards in the vicinity, this was not the imperial city. In this city, there were close to 200,000 Baiming army. They could be deployed at any time. Just relying on these embroidered uniform guards was not enough to scare them. Ancient River only needed to shout, and some of the nearby soldiers, and patrolling soldiers would rush over to help him control the situation. Shi Wanshan naturally understood Ancient River's intentions, but he did not agree to do so. It was clear that Deng Chang's actions today were not his own. It was the head eunuch Jin Ying's idea. It was very likely the emperor's idea. If he charged out now, it would be no different from a rebellion. In ancient times, rebellion was a great crime. It was punishable by death. How could Shi Wanshan take such a risk? He had never thought about it, nor had he prepared for it. He signaled to Ning Wenfeng with his eyes to keep an eye on Ancient River's deputy head eunuch. He then sat down across from Deng Chang and sternly asked, "Eunuch Deng, what is the meaning of this?" Right now, Walla and Commander Ili's army is marching toward the first city. A major battle is unavoidable. This is the time for us to strike. Soon, Shajing and Jingzhou will belong to the Baiming. Deng Chang sighed. He had been in the city all this time, so how could he not understand this principle? 2 hours ago, he had also been thinking this. After all, the Xian Mansion guards had performed a great service, and as an army eunuch, he had received many benefits. But who would have thought that just a moment ago, a eunuch from the imperial palace of the capital had come to see him, even taking out a letter personally written by Jining. The letter explained in detail that the Xuanfu soldiers could not take advantage of the situation to make trouble for Walla and Ili, or else they would be ruining the plans of the imperial court. She also ordered that if Shi Wanshan and the other two did not listen to her advice, they could be arrested on the spot and escorted back to the capital. Regardless of whether Deng Chang accepted the order or not, he had to carry it out. That was the reason for the current situation, and also the reason for his current sigh. Head eunuch Shi, we are just serving the imperial court. This is an order from above. All we have to do is to obey. Don't you think so? Deng Chang did not explain anything. He did not know what to explain, so he could only use orders to suppress people. What is it? You clearly have a good opportunity to attack, but you don't do anything? The straightforward and fiery deputy head eunuch Ancient River also walked over. Before he arrived, his questioning voice had already been heard. Deng Chang was not angry when he heard this. He just shook his head and said, I don't know whether it is an opportunity to attack or not. But since it is an order from above, we have to obey. Deputy head eunuch Gu, do you want to disobey the order? Ancient River still wanted to argue. Shi Wanshan spoke up, that's enough. General Ancient River, restrain your temper. Don't be impatient. Yes. Even if we want to send troops, we can't do it in such a hurry. Since we have already brought good wine and good dishes, how can we waste them and not eat them? Another deputy head eunuch Ning Wenfeng chuckled and sat down at the table. He even picked up his chopsticks and looked like he was going to eat a big piece. The smart Ning Wenfeng had already realized that the order from above did not allow them to send troops. Rather than stubbornly resisting and provoking anger, it was better to sit down and have a good chat to see if they could find out what went wrong. Shi Wanshan quickly understood Ning Wenfeng's intentions and suppressed the anger in his heart. Only Ancient River was left. Seeing that he wouldn't be of much use even if he stood, he simply sat down and took a big bowl of wine to relieve the depression in his heart. Shi Wanshan and Ning Wenfeng raised their wine cups to toast Deng Chang. Eunuch Deng Chang, who knew their intentions, smiled bitterly. Generals, don't ask me what is going on. To be honest, I don't know either. But I think you guys should be able to guess it. Whatever you guessed, that's what it is. I only know that the reinforcements sent by the Emperor, Governor Shiheng, are currently leading troops in the Jianghu Pass area and are not moving forward. When Deng Chang said this, Shi Wanshan and Ning Wenfeng had nothing to say. Although it was only a piece of information, it already told them too much. The reinforcements were not in a hurry to come. Instead, they were not moving forward. This was the attitude of the imperial court. In other words, they didn't have the intention to start a war with Walla and Ili. Instead, they wanted to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. How long had it been since the Walla coalition army left and the imperial court had already sent the news? It could be seen that this was not something unexpected. It had been prepared for a long time. In other words, the Walla coalition army bypassed them and directly contacted the higher-ups. They even contacted the emperor and got the result they wanted. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so assured to leave their way out and rush straight to the first city. When they thought of this result, the four of them didn't look good. This drinking session wasn't very enjoyable. After a while, Dang Chong left first. When he left a sentence, "Please stay in this magistrate court. If you need anything, even if it's a woman, you can tell the brothers of the embroidered uniform guards. They will fulfill all your wishes." This was equivalent to house arrest. Dang Chong left, and the group of embroidered uniform guards also disappeared from their sight. But it could be imagined that once they made a move, they would immediately appear from the darkness. The three dignified commanders who held heavy military forces were actually placed under house arrest when the war was about to start. This unhappiness made Ancient River the first to get angry. He threw the wine jar on the ground, opened his eyes and shouted, "What's going on? What is the meaning of this? Are you repaying kindness with ingratitude? Brother Gu, be careful with your words." Shi Wanshan's face changed after hearing this. Ning Wenfeng, who was at the side, was even more direct. He slashed out with his palm and hit the back of Gu He's neck, knocking him unconscious. This was also something that couldn't be helped. They were surrounded by embroidered uniform guards. If some words were spread out, not only Ancient River, but they would also be guilty. Ancient River was knocked out, and it was as if the world had returned to peace. Only the whispers between Shi Wanshan and Ning Wenfeng were left. "Commander, are we just going to watch the war start and do nothing? He had just helped us before. So what? Can we still disobey the orders from above? Everything we have is given by the emperor and the court. The emperor's orders cannot be disobeyed." But why? Is it because the higher-ups think they are clever? Don't they know that once the Walla army wins, they will immediately point their spears at us? At that time, we won't have any allies. If we encounter any difficulties, who will help us? On the other hand, if the Duke of Loyalty wins, he will not let us off easily. It is not impossible for him to start a war with the Baiming army. Comparing our military strength, what are our chances of winning? Haha. Shi Wanshan's cold laughter was heard. The higher-ups? When have the higher-ups done anything right? They clearly said that they would give us 100,000 taels of silver as a reward, but they only got 10,000 taels of silver. Because of this, they almost caused a mutiny in the army. If they were smart, why would they do something like digging their own foundation? Counting on them. Haha. At this point, the air seemed to have frozen. The commander and deputy commander both stopped talking. They suddenly felt a sense of helplessness. If one did not seek death, one would not die. The Great Ming Dynasty was originally prosperous, but because of the internal strife, the eunuchs monopolizing power, a dynasty was finally destroyed. However, at this moment, no matter how helpless or resentful the two commanders felt, all they could do was complain. Unless they wanted to rebel, they could only listen to the orders of the higher-ups. They did not even have the right to leave this government office. After a few days of traveling, the vanguard of the Walla and Ili army arrived at the foot of Saihan Mountain. When the scouts went up the mountain to investigate, they found that the place had long been empty. According to the scouts, the people on the mountain had been gone for a few days, not just 1 or 2 days. Chapter 979. The news quickly spread to the Middle Army, and Apu's expression became slightly gloomy after hearing it. The 5-star army gave up on defending Saihan Mountain for no reason. This could only mean one thing, that is, they had already guessed that they would attack the beginning city. In this case, the beginning city, which had been prepared for a long time, would not be as easy to attack as they thought. The army was about to set out, and they would not stop just because the other party was prepared. The army continued to move forward, relying on the absolute advantage in strength. This time, Yes Hen and Apu were determined to take down the beginning city. At the very least, they wanted to drive Yang Chendong out of the grassland. If possible, it would be best to kill him here. The army of 300,000 came in a mighty manner. Along the way, the green grassland became dry, revealing yellow or black ground. After all, there were too many warhorses, and the amount of food consumed every day was an astronomical figure. After another 3 days of rushing, the army finally arrived at the so-called first city of the grassland. From a distance, the beginning city was like a heavenly pass standing on the grassland. It was like a heavenly beast that landed here, showing its domineering and mighty power. Is this the beginning city? It's really majestic. Riding on his warhorse, he came to the grassland that was 5 miles away from the beginning city. Looking up at the high city in the distance, he first expressed his true feelings. Prime Minister Apu, who also saw the beginning city for the first time, also showed a look of admiration. He sighed sincerely. The Duke of Loyalty and Courage of the Great Ming Dynasty is really an outstanding person. Just from the scale of this city, you can see that he has put in a lot of effort. This financial resources and this courage are not what ordinary people can achieve. But it will soon belong to us, won't it? After sighing, Yeshen's eyes showed a greedy look. Yes, it will soon belong to us. Apu was also inexplicably excited. The development of Ili in the past few years was not very satisfactory, and it was all thanks to the role played by him as the Prime Minister. If they could take down the first city and plunder a large amount of resources from there, it would definitely be a great stimulus to the domestic economy. Perhaps it would even lead to a great development. Yes Hen was thinking about becoming the lord of the origin city. In this way, even if he lost a fight in the future, he wouldn't have to be like a stray dog with nowhere to go. At that time, he would have the strength to attack and defend. At that time, it was not impossible for his strength to double or even more. The two people in power gave the order for the army to set up camp with expectant expressions. In order to make the harvest this time even more abundant, they gave the order to surround the city on all sides. They were not allowed to let anyone or anything in the beginning city go. In the process of the army surrounding the city, more than 300,000 mu of grain fields appeared in front of them. For this matter, Yes Hen and Alip even personally came to the scene. When they saw so much food about to grow, they couldn't help but feel excited. With this, their army's food problem could be considered solved. Therefore, the two of them gave the same order at the same time. They ordered that no one was allowed to destroy the grain fields that were still growing. In the end, the beginning city was surrounded. Looking down from the top of the city gate tower, there was a continuous stretch of barracks next to each other, and the densely packed silhouettes were like endless ants. Under Yang Chendong's intention, he deliberately opened the 4 inner city gates to allow ordinary people to go to the outer city to watch the enemy. This completely abnormal action immediately attracted countless people to go up the city tower to watch. Then, many people saw too many enemies coming down the city tower. Their legs were still trembling. They were really frightened. After all, the 300,000 soldiers mentioned and the 300,000 soldiers in front of their eyes were two completely different concepts. For this matter, the city lord, Yu Mian, raised doubts. According to him, the people couldn't know too much. Otherwise, they would really be frightened and there might even be internal strife. Regarding this, Yang Chendong only said a few words. After enjoying peace for a long time, one will forget about war. Now, let them feel the atmosphere before the war. It will only make them cherish peace and life even more, as well as the hard-won happy life now. In order to ensure that this kind of life can last, everyone must contribute their strength. The reason why Yang Chendong made this decision was based on his own reasons. In this battle, he didn't plan to use too much of the regular army. If possible, he wouldn't use a single regular army. The reserves were enough. Just like when he faced the 30,000 elite cavalry, Yang Qindong adopted a training method. In the end, he created the world's #1 cavalry division, which strengthened and increased the strength of the 5-star army's cavalry. This time, he was still preparing to train the troops. Only real battles could produce elite troops. If they relied only on drills, it would be better if they encountered a favorable battle. However, once the situation became critical, it was hard to say what kind of decision they would make. Previously, Yang Qindong had decided to build another army after the new First Army. It would be called the new Second Army. However, he only gave a rough idea of how the new Second Army would be formed. Until now, when the city was besieged, he gave his final opinion and decision. The reserve soldiers would be qualified to become the new Second Army soldiers if they didn't die after guarding the city tower for 3 days. Soldiers could only become more mature after experiencing bloody battles and life and death situations. Perhaps there were some who were very brave, some who were both intelligent and courageous, and some who simply focused on evading and attacking. However, no matter what the result was, as long as they could stay on the city tower for 3 days without being harmed, it was enough to prove that they were capable and could be called a veteran. The facts had already proven that Yang Qindong wanted to build an elite army. He wanted to walk the path of elite soldiers. Moreover, he valued the lives of the soldiers very much. As long as there was a slight possibility, he would think of a way to ensure the safety of the soldiers. Under such principles, the new Second Army naturally couldn't be made up of only new soldiers. Otherwise, if they encountered a tough battle and suffered heavy losses, it wouldn't be what he wanted. The task of building the new Second Army was given, and the procedures for selecting the soldiers were also given. In order to ensure that there wouldn't be any accidents while training the soldiers, the 8,000 soldiers of the new First Army's recruit division also ascended the city tower. In principle, they didn't need to make a move unless there was an emergency. Training soldiers was fine, but if they lost the city and suffered a great defeat because of training soldiers, that wouldn't be what Yang Qindong wanted. Give them a sufficient number of bows and weapons. Tell them that if they want to become the glorious 5-star army soldiers, it's time to show off. After knowing that the 4 cities were surrounded and that not even a drop of water could trickle through, Yang Qindong unhurriedly gave a military order to the future commander of the new Second Army, Shi Bi. This young man who was half Han and half Mongolian had been put in an important position since he met Yang Qindong. He finally had the opportunity to shoulder the burden alone. For this important position, all Shi Bi had to do was to work hard and do his best. Yang Qindong was undoubtedly very relieved to leave this matter to Shi Bi. Therefore, when the war was about to arrive, while everyone else was nervously busy, he accompanied Luan Xiaoyu in the Yang residence and taught her how to sing a new song and compose a new program. As a result, other than a group of generals coming in and out of the Yang residence every day, there was also a group of female soldiers from the publicity department who joined in the fun. Regarding this, it gave everyone the feeling that their 6th young master was too ambitious. However, it was this great ambition that gave everyone unparalleled confidence. Yang Qindong's indifference and confidence encouraged everyone. Gradually, more and more officers didn't take the war seriously. It took them 2 full days to surround the first city. Next, it was time for the army to set up camp. It took another 2 days for the 300,000 soldiers to prepare the siege weapons. When they arrived at the first city, they realized that the ladders that they had prepared before were still too short. The length was far from enough. The third city's Wuchuan city was only 50 to 60 feet high. The first city's tower was 150 feet high. The corresponding length of the ladder also had to be increased. This matter was difficult for the Walla coalition army. They had to send more soldiers to search for useful materials in the forest. At that time, without the help of firearms, the offensive was generally the same old 3 methods: shield carts, catapults, and ladders. Needless to say, ladders were used to climb up the city. The structure was simple. The catapult was a long-range offensive weapon. Its main purpose was to deter and suppress the enemy's arrows. Unfortunately, the stones in the grassland were not easy to find. Especially when the first city was being built, the nearby stones were dug up early. At this moment, the catapult became a gunpowder vehicle. Because the amount of gunpowder in the Walla coalition army was limited and the accuracy of the attack was not good, the power of the catapult was also greatly reduced. Finally, the shield carts. This was a wooden cart wrapped in a layer of cowhide to ensure that arrows couldn't easily penetrate it. In addition, the cowhide was soaked in water to ensure that it was impervious to fire and water. It was the best auxiliary method to get close to the city. At the same time, it was also one of the important weapons of the Walla coalition army when attacking the city. Among the 300,000 coalition army, most of the Walla coalition army were cavalry. There were also 50,000 infantrymen. This was also the main force of the siege. As long as they could attack the city tower and then rush down to open the city gate from the inside, the cavalry warriors could take the opportunity to kill their way into the city. At that time, they would still have the advantage of numbers. The first city would change hands and all the resources inside would be snatched away. Thank you, Prime Minister. Tomorrow was the day of the first attack. Yes Hen looked at Alip with a pleading expression. Well said, well said. Alip nodded. Choosing the first city as the target was originally his first suggestion. Now that he had the infantrymen to attack the city, the first battle would naturally start with him. That night, Alip called the infantryman General Korban and gave him the order to attack the city tomorrow. Remember, on the first day of the siege, you still have to test the waters. First, you have to find out the strength of the enemy. The outside world has always said that the 5-star army's combat power is extraordinary. You have to be careful. In fact, there is nothing to be afraid of. The advantage of the cavalry is to charge and kill, not to defend the city. So just do it. Chapter 980. Korban nodded confidently and said, "Don't worry, Prime Minister. Our 50,000 infantrymen will not let you down." On the third day of the 8th lunar month, 1455 AD, the first city defense war officially began. That morning, the sun rose slowly, and the sky was clear. The horn was officially blown, and the sound of soldiers marching on the ground could be heard from the 4 outer cities of the first city. The sound alarmed more than 50 people in the first city, and it made the 20,000 reserve soldiers on the city tower excited and nervous. The 20,000 reserve soldiers were divided into 4 cities, with 5,000 people in each city. This was the first batch of warriors from the logistics division who signed up for the war. The news of the establishment of the new Second Army had already spread in the city. For the reserve soldiers, this would be a great opportunity to officially step into the ranks of the Iron Warriors. They were all warriors, but the treatment of the regular army and the reserve soldiers was very different, which made many people unhappy. Unfortunately, the Heavenly Khan walked the path of the elite soldiers, which everyone knew. Even if you had a lot of skills, you lacked a platform to perform, which was a sad thing. Now, the new Second Army was going to be established, and there were more than 20,000 official soldiers waiting for everyone, which made many people eager to try. But it seemed that 20,000 people were already a lot, and in comparison, the competition was still there. Not to mention that there were 80,000 reserve soldiers in the logistics division and 60,000 newly captured soldiers. There were about 50,000 to 60,000 ambitious young people in the first city. Together, there were 200,000 people, which was a ratio of almost 10 to 1, which made many people feel a lot of pressure. Those who did not die in the battle and defended the city tower for 3 days could join the army. The moment the news was announced, the applicants crowded the recruitment office of the new Second Army. If it was not for the fact that they were prepared, there would be a big problem. These 20,000 people were the first batch to sign up, and they were arranged into 4 echelons to guard the 4 cities. The outer city tower of the first city was spacious enough, otherwise, it would not be able to accommodate so many warriors. There was a so-called safe passage behind each tower. Usually, Division Commander Lu Zhuo would lead the soldiers of the new army division to wait here, in case there was any problem, and they would fill in the gaps in time. This passageway also had another meaning. Once a soldier couldn't stand the baptism of war and felt afraid, he could retreat from here. He wouldn't be considered a deserter and wouldn't be punished, but he would be recorded and lose the opportunity to join the new Second Army. Such a humane design was to protect the lives of the soldiers to the greatest extent by Yang Chendong. After all, sometimes a person's death would lead to a disaster for a family. The war drum sounded under the city tower, and 2,000 infantry soldiers appeared under each tower. They walked in a uniform pace, push a shield cart, ladders, longbows, swords, and shields. They walked slowly, with heavy footsteps with a strong murderous aura. The soldiers of the First Army was the First Army's first, the soldiers of the First Army, and first, the soldiers of the first into the First Army soldiers of the first, and first, the first of the first soldiers be soldiers men. Not all men were born warriors. There were many who didn't like the way of killing, and there were even some who were born cowards. This time, they were fighting for honor and to protect the people of the city. That was why they stood up bravely. However, when they stood on the tower with bows and arrows in hand, they realized that war was not just talk. It was also not like what was described in the books, where the anger of an ordinary man would cause blood to splatter. It was a fight for life, a process of facing death, and the cruelest test of one's mind. The war had not yet begun, but the First Army soldiers patrolling the city saw all kinds of unbearable performances of the First Army soldiers. These soldiers who had experienced countless battles of life and death played the role of the pillars of the city. When they saw that some of the soldiers' performance was no different from normal, they did not say anything to humiliate them. Instead, they kept encouraging them. Everyone, don't panic, and don't be afraid. Just perform well like you did in normal training. Remember, when you are brave enough and clever enough, even the arrows will avoid you. Only those who are truly panicking will become the target of the enemy's arrows. Everyone, relax. In fact, we were very nervous when we fought for the first time. No one is not afraid of death, and no one is born a qualified and excellent soldier. Everything comes from countless experiences, but our war is not meaningless. Think about how we can ensure the safety of our families because of our efforts. Think about how our families and loved ones can live better and more dignified lives because of our efforts. Think about how our hands can lay down a peaceful land and supreme honor for our future generations. Warriors, let's fight. Victory will belong to you. Following the consolation of the veterans, graceful female propaganda soldiers appeared in the safety zone behind the city gate tower. Each of them was about 10 meters away from each other, ensuring that their voices could be heard everywhere on the city gate tower. Fellow recruits, the time to perform has come. The time to change your life has come. Think about your families who are waiting for your triumphant return. Think about your relatives and friends who are waiting for you. Show us your fearless and brave side. We will be with you. The sudden arrival of the beautiful female soldiers gave the new recruits an even greater boost of morale. After all, no man was willing to show his cowardly side in front of a woman. For a moment, many of the soldiers became much calmer. Some of the soldiers who couldn't even hold their bows no longer trembled. Their eyes were more resolute, and they appeared to be more resolute. Below the city, the bugle horn sounded. It was no longer as dull as before, and it became much more resounding. Less than 100 meters away from the foot of the tower, the infantry began their first wave of attack. Immediately, arrows fell like rain. Ding ding dang dang, they smashed around the shield carts. However, most of them were useless. Only a few managed to hit the enemy infantry. The gap between the recruits and the First Army soldiers was infinitely magnified at this moment. In a short period of time, tens of thousands of arrows were wasted. In exchange, the enemy suffered limited casualties. Fortunately, Yang Chendong and Shibi had long expected such a thing to happen. The bows used by the recruits were very crude. They were recently rushed out, so losing a few was not a big deal. The arrows that were shot fell on the First Army soldiers who were attacking the city, causing them to laugh. When they saw that the archery skills of the soldiers defending the city were so low, and the arrows were so crude, such opponents made them feel lucky and full of confidence at the same time. When the opponent's strength was infinitely reduced, it meant that they were one step closer to victory. Especially when the news reached the ears of the infantry commander, General Korban, he couldn't help but laugh 3 times. Good, good. Seeing is really better than hearing 100 times. Everyone says that the 5-star army's combat strength is tyrannical, and that it's difficult to be a match for them. But in my opinion, it's pure nonsense. How about this? Increase the intensity of the attack, and strive to break the city in 3 days. By then, all the good things in the beginning city will be ours. Korban was not just talking to his subordinates, nor was it just to boost their morale. He also reported the news of taking down the beginning city in 3 days to Prime Minister Arap. Such bold words made Arap and Yeshen, who received the news, very excited. They originally thought that it would be a tough battle, but now it seemed that they had overestimated the Han army. Thinking about it, the Han people had always been synonymous with weakness in front of the Mongolian cavalry. One was a carnivorous wolf, and the other was a herbivorous sheep. How could they be compared to each other? On the outer walls of the beginning city, after the initial panic, the 20,000 recruits began to gradually get into the role under the guidance of the First Army soldiers. Especially when they noticed that because the walls were too high, the enemy's infantry needed a certain amount of time just to climb the ladder. Because the walls were too high, it was difficult for the enemy's arrows to accurately hit the top of the city tower. Even if the arrows hit the top, they would not have much power and would not be a threat to them. After that, their courage became stronger and stronger. Some people said that most of the alcohol tolerance was trained, and in fact, courage was the same. When they killed for the first time, they would be nervous, scared, terrified, and even have nightmares. However, after killing many people, it would become a habit, and they would realize that it was not a big deal. It was the same with archery. After the initial panic, they realized that the enemy was not a threat to their safety. With the constant guidance of the First Army soldiers, once they experienced the initial nervousness of the war, many of them could perform the correct operation according to the training. In addition, not all of the 20,000 people were new recruits. Many of them were captives who had been on the battlefield before. They more or less had some combat experience. When everything became familiar again, the power of the bow and arrow could finally be unleashed. At least it was not like before, where they missed 9 out of 10 shots. With the help of the shield carts, they quickly came to the corner of the city wall. Then, it was time to set up the ladder and start the siege. Because the 5-star army's performance was too poor, Korban's initial tentative siege became a real siege. Another 8,000 people, and 2,000 soldiers were added to each side of the city wall. In addition, the limited amount of gunpowder and catapults were also prepared, and it looked like they were going to take down the city in one go. Speaking of which, the Mongolians were best at hurting, and then robbing. Things like gunpowder were not something they could produce. The gunpowder that they had now was thanks to the Baiming army, which they left in Jianghu city and left behind when they fled the city. Looking at the small amount of gunpowder that was robbed, Korban gritted his teeth and said fiercely, "Take out half of it, and we will blast the 5-star army today, and let them know how powerful we are. Then, the army will be ready to take down the city in one go." Chapter 981. Korban gave the order, and the catapults were all in position. More and more siege infantry gathered below the city walls, their eyes flashing with excitement. It was as if they could already see mountains of gold and silver right in front of them, ready for them to take as they please. On top of the city gate tower, Xia Bei, who was almost a general without an army, personally went into battle. From a well-protected watchtower, he looked down with binoculars and saw the catapults ready for battle. He was shocked. "Quick, pass down the order. Everyone find a safe place to hide. At the same time, inform the new army's new recruit division's division commander Lu to prepare the division to attack." Korban had seen the soldiers' performance just now, and he was more or less disappointed. But when he thought about how humans needed constant training to grow, his heart was filled with anticipation. Now that the enemy was about to use gunpowder to attack the city, how could he not know the danger? Even if he could pretend not to see and let the soldiers experience an even harsher battle, it would just be more casualties. But when he remembered what Yang Chendong always said, that soldiers had families and loved ones, and that every death in battle was a tragedy for that family, he decided that it was best to avoid the brunt of the attack. The order was given quickly, and as more and more city defenders found suitable places to hide, Korban's shouts from below the walls could be heard. With that order, hundreds of gunpowder bags rose into the air, whistling as they leapt towards the city walls. In an extremely short time, the rumbling of explosions rang out one after another. Some of them landed on the corridors of the city walls, bringing with them terrifying lethality. The battlements on the city walls that had been intact were blown apart one after another, scattering debris everywhere. Fortunately, the accuracy of the catapults was too poor. Less than a fifth of the catapults hit their targets. Most of the catapults exploded on the city walls. Some of them even fell to the ground before exploding, injuring many of their own men. Charge! Korban felt that the time had come, and with the might of the gunpowder, he gave the order for the entire army to charge. A total of 16,000 infantrymen from the 4 cities were stepping on ladders, shouting slogans and rushing up the city walls. On the city gate tower, the 20,000 new recruits had all retreated to a safe area. When they saw the tragic scene on the city gate tower corridor after the explosion, they all felt a wave of lingering fear. If they had not retreated just now, at least a few thousand people would have died or been injured because of that wave of attacks. While the recruits were still rejoicing that they had retreated quickly enough, the 8,000 veterans of the new recruit division had already charged out. Although the name was Recruit Division, most of the people who joined this place were veterans. When they arrived before the battlements, all of their footsteps were steady, and their expressions were normal. Obviously, such a battle was like child's play to them, and it already couldn't cause any waves. Division Commander Lu Zhuo took the lead. He used a wooden fork that he had prepared beforehand to push away a ladder in front of him. Frantic shouts from several enemies who were climbing up the ladder could be heard. Using this opportunity, he lowered his head to look down at the city gate tower. He saw a dense group of enemies lining up to climb the ladder, and a strange smile flashed across his face. He reached behind his waist, and a wooden grenade appeared in his hand. It was not just Lu Zhuo himself. Every one of the 8,000 soldiers he brought with him had one in their hands. It was given to them by the logistician when they went up the city gate tower that morning. Although each of them only had one, when 8,000 of them were put together, the power was terrifying enough. Everyone, get ready. I'll throw it down after I count to 3. Then, everyone crouch down with your hands on your heads as per our usual training. Listen up. 1, 2, 3, throw. After Lu Zhuo shouted the number 3, the grenade in his hand had already been thrown down the city gate in front of him. He then crouched down with his hands on his head. More than 8,000 grenades rained down from the sky. More than 2,000 grenades landed outside each of the city gates. More than 10,000 infantrymen who were climbing up the ladder were stunned by the formation in front of them. They did not know what this wooden hammer-like thing was. They only saw bursts of smoke and fire flashing past. Some unlucky soldiers were directly hit by the grenades and cried out in pain. But even so, no one made any dodging movements. This was the biggest disadvantage of limited vision. They had never even seen a grenade before. When they did not know what it was, the disastrous consequences were already destined. 3 seconds after Lu Zhuo and the others threw the grenades, a loud and deafening shout finally sounded, followed by flames that soared into the sky. When the power of more than 8,000 grenades was combined, the effect and the scene were very spectacular. Amidst the rumbling sounds, the earth trembled as a result. At this moment, the people of the first city could not help but look in the direction of the outer city gate tower with worry in their hearts. When they saw the bright 5-star army still fluttering in the wind on the city gate tower, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Before the war, it was said that as long as the flag was still there, the first city would not have any problems. All the worries could be put aside. The loud roar also alarmed the Walla Alliance army, who was waiting for news in the military tent. Yes Hen walked out of the main tent with a frightened expression. He would never forget that such a powerful cannon had appeared outside the capital of Baiming. At one point, he was dizzy and scared. Was history going to repeat itself? At this moment, he suddenly had a regretful thought. The first city was the territory of the war god. How could it be taken down so easily? Outside the first city, the cavalry scouts of the Baiming army who were wandering nearby also felt the shock. At the same time, the news that the 5-star army had unknown weapons of mass destruction spread out. Under the first city, after a series of roars, everything quieted down again. Looking at this place, it was like purgatory on earth. The shield carts wrapped in cowhide had long been torn apart, and not a single complete ladder could be found. Not only these items, even the 16,000 infantrymen were blown to smithereens. Many of them couldn't even find a complete corpse. On the charred ground, there were only the occasional wails and screams of a few lucky but heavily injured soldiers. More than 8,000 grenades were thrown together, and even the thick soil was lifted 3 feet high, not to mention the soldiers made of flesh and blood. Under the powerful shockwave and airflow, no matter if they were standing on the ground or climbing up the ladder in mid-air, all of them were wiped out in one battle. General Korban's eyes were red as he staggered slowly to the battlefield. Looking at such a tragic scene, he could not breathe. His whole body straightened up and he fainted from anger. On the first day of the first battle, the morale of the besieging army was high. They wanted to fight a beautiful battle and take the lead. But who would have thought that it would end like this? The annihilation of more than 10,000 soldiers was like a heavy hammer that smashed on the head of the Walla army. It showed them the powerful combat power of the 5-star army. With such a heavy defeat, the siege on the first day naturally stopped. It attracted the cheers of the 20,000 new recruits on the city tower. Although they weren't the ones who created this outcome, as witnesses, they felt honored to have witnessed it. After seeing the new recruits in action, they were filled with endless confidence. Even if they did not use advanced weapons like grenades, they were confident that they could defend the city and win. In contrast, the Ali army retreated 2 miles, as if they were afraid that such a destructive weapon would be thrown at their feet. In the main tent, Korban, who had fainted from anger, had woken up. The first thing he did was to ask for forgiveness, and then to ask for battle. Prime Minister, this general is guilty. If I was not in a hurry to make a contribution, they would not have taken advantage of the loophole and inflicted such heavy casualties on us. When we attack the city in the future, I promise that we will not send too many people at once. We will not give them the chance to deal a heavy blow to our army. Also, this general believes that there aren't many of these powerful weapons in the 5-star army. Otherwise, they wouldn't have waited until after they were bombarded by us to use them. Korban, who had fainted and woke up, was obviously a lot smarter. He seemed to have thought through many things. Then, when he looked at Apal, his face was filled with fighting spirit. After losing the first battle and suffering such heavy losses, he had to make a statement. Otherwise, even if he was killed according to military law, he would have nothing to say. When Apal learned that the siege army had been wiped out, he really wanted to kill Korban to prove his innocence. But considering that the battle was imminent, and that it was not auspicious to harm one's own general, and considering that few among the infantry commanders could compare to Korban, he finally suppressed his killing intent. Instead, he looked at Korban with a burning gaze. I'll give you one more chance. If you suffer such a crushing defeat again, you don't have to come see me. Kill yourself as an apology. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Prime Minister. Korban, who had just escaped death, thanked him profusely. His eyes flashed with rage. He had suffered such a huge setback this time, and he had to get back at them. It was not only about his life, but also his dignity. Having regrouped, Korban ordered his soldiers to clean up the battlefield and move away the broken flesh and bones. Then, he called in a large number of shield carts and scaling ladders, and began another round of siege when it was 10:00 in the evening. After the previous experience, Korban had strictly controlled the number of soldiers he sent out each time. Usually, he would send out 1,000 men each time, and at most, no more than 2,000. He would not give the enemy a chance to deal a heavy blow to him. Chapter 982. The siege of the city began day and night. Every day, the sound of arrows piercing through the air could be heard from both the top and bottom of the city walls. The number of casualties also began to rise continuously. The smell of blood sprinkled on the city walls and did not disperse for a long time. The enemy became more obedient, and the pressure on the recruits lessened. The recruits led by Lu Zhuo naturally did not attack. Instead, they handed over the task of defending the city to the reserve soldiers, giving them ample opportunity to train. The two sides engaged in a back-and-forth battle. Under the attack of day and night, 3 days passed in a flash. Compared to the boldness 3 days ago, Korban's arrogance had been reduced a lot. He was prepared for a long siege. He wanted to see who would be the one to lose in the end if they continued to fight day and night. Nearly 300,000 soldiers stayed under the beginning city, and the amount of resources they consumed every day was astronomical. With so many people putting all their hope and reliance on the siege army, Yeshen felt a lot of pressure. Because of this, he took the initiative to find Apu. However, before he could speak, Apu said, "Leader Apu, it seems that the walls of Origin City are high and sturdy. It won't be easy to take it down. Instead of wasting all our forces here, why don't we attack from multiple fronts?" Attack from multiple fronts? What do you mean, Prime Minister? Even though it was the same as what he thought, Yeshen still pretended not to know. Apal was a wise prime minister, and he was also a famous figure in the history of Yeshen. He saw that Yeshen knew but pretended not to know, but he did not point it out. Instead, he pointed at the direction of North Desert City on the map and said, "I have sent scouts out in the past few days. North Desert City is also a bustling city. The investment is not less than the beginning city, but the number of soldiers is not as much as the Wrath City. There is only a 20,000-man army there, and it has just been formed for more than a year. It has not experienced any major battles. I think defeating them and taking down North Desert City should not be difficult for leader Yeshen." Take down North Desert City? Yeshen pretended to be interested. "Yes, take that place. Seeing that it will snow in a month, our army can't keep camping in the wild. If we can take down North Desert City, then we will have a place to stay. Then, we can look for an opportunity to take down First City. In this way, our chances of winning will increase by several %. What do you think?" Alip asked with a confident face. He was certain that Yeshen would agree to this request. After all, North Desert City was also very prosperous, and it was also full of great temptation. Sure enough, Yeshen only thought for a moment before nodding in agreement. This was his original intention for coming here. Since it was to his liking, there was no reason for him to refuse. Not only that, he also used the excuse that the main forces were besieging the city, and that the losses were light, indicating that he would undertake the task of capturing Mabe City. At the same time, he also made a promise that the things in Mabe City and the people and slaves would be equally divided between the two sides. He would never eat more than he wanted. Yeshen was probably the kind of person who said that trying to cover up would only make things more conspicuous. The so-called equal division was possible, but it would definitely not be fair. For the slaves obtained after capturing the city, the same number of people would be divided, but often the results would be different due to the difference in age and physique. How could the shrewd Alip not know this point? Considering that they were now allies, and North Desert City had not been captured, it was not a good thing to have a gap on the issue of benefits. Alip nodded generously and said, "Okay, I believe in the promise of the Walla army. Then, I will have to trouble leader Yeshen." You're welcome. Since we are allies, helping each other is a matter of course." Yeshen laughed loudly. After returning to the tent, Yeshen immediately ordered one of the 4 generals, Mu Tua, to give him 30,000 elite cavalry and let him go to North Desert City and occupy it. Remember, after occupying North Desert City, first distribute some of the young and able-bodied men to our harvest. Do you understand? Before capturing North Desert City, Yes Hen was already thinking about the future. This was a kind of confidence, but also a kind of disregard. As Alip said, he had also sent people to investigate. North Desert City only had 20,000 city guards. He sent 30,000 troops and had the advantage in numbers. In addition, the first city was surrounded. Presumably, North Desert City must have been in a state of panic. If they attacked at this time, there was no reason for them to lose. Mu Tuo, who was called, had a face full of confidence. He patted his chest and promised to complete the task. Early the next morning, he commanded the troops and headed in the direction of North Desert City. On the city tower, after an observation sentry discovered this change, he reported the news to Yang Chendong. After sending Wan Xiaoyu to the publicity team to rehearse the program, Yang Chendong came to the First City Academy to prepare for a lecture. The news came. After hearing it, he just smiled and said, "Some people just want to die. If that's the case, we just have to wait and see the result." As soon as he felt that the situation was not right, Yang Chendong arranged for the 1st Cavalry Division and the Tatar Division of the new army to go out of the first city and ambush on the road to North Desert City. Next was the battle to defend the city. There were very few times when the cavalry could be used. Since that was the case, it was better to send them to the battlefield where they should be. With this preparation, it was no wonder that he was so careless. The combat power of the 1st Cavalry Division was obvious to all. In addition, there was the assistance of the Tatar Division. Not to mention that there were only 30,000 enemy cavalry. Even if there were 80,000 or 80,000 enemy cavalry, they would still be heavily injured. In terms of the combat power of cavalry, the current 5-star army was difficult to be a match. Every day, the 1st Cavalry Division had just undergone an expansion. According to Yang Chendong's plan, the original 3 divisions had been reduced to 5 divisions, with a total of 10,000 people. Don't think that after the expansion, the combat power would decrease. In the past few months, the division commander Tian who had put all his energy into the recruitment assessment. In his eyes, only the most outstanding cavalry could enter this glorious group. As for what kind of background you had, if your requirements did not meet the standards, sorry, no one would be able to persuade you. Under the strict assessment, the number of 10,000 cavalry was finally gathered. Not only that, the new 4th Regiment and 5th Regiment commander also confirmed the final candidates through the assessment. Among them, the 4th Regiment commander was one of the students from the Yang Family Academy, and also Tian whose classmate, Bai Shuang. The 5th Regiment commander was Gong Feng, who had fought countless battles and was already the deputy division commander of the new army. This time, instead of being promoted, he was demoted to a regiment commander. However, he was so happy that his face was blooming with a smile. The 2 regiment commanders had gone through countless assessments. In the end, the other 3 regiment commanders also went on stage for a while before the final decision was made. Whether it was the individual quality or the military commanding ability, they had all been verified and the assessment results were excellent. Finally, the expansion of the 1st Cavalry Division was completed. They were eager for a big battle. They wanted to use victory to test their strength. In particular, the 6th young master, Tian Hu, had said that once the expansion of the army was completed, and the facts proved that the expansion was successful, he, as the division commander, would be awarded the rank of Major General for the first time. He would be the first person in the division to be promoted to Major General. Only being a Major General was not the final goal of Tian Hu, but to be able to break the limit of being promoted to a Major General was something he looked forward to in his heart. Waiting always felt like a long time. Fortunately, the enemy did not let him down. The scouts in the front reported that the 30,000 cavalry of the Wara were coming. Looking from afar, smoke and dust covered the sky and the earth, and the sound of shouting was endless. They're finally here. Under a big tree, the 5 regiment commanders who received the news all rushed over. Then they all looked at the division commander Tian Hu with an expectant face, waiting for the military order. Under everyone's expectant eyes, Tian Hu stood up straight and swept his eyes over the 5 regiment commanders one by one. Prepare to act according to the previous plan. Everyone, this is our first battle after the expansion of the army. I hope we can show our power and prestige. I hope that when the enemy hears the name of the 1st Cavalry Division in the future, they will know how to write the word fear. They will know what it means to be afraid without fighting. Please rest assured, Division Commander, we promise to complete the mission. The 5 regiment commanders saluted together. Their eyes were shining brightly, and their whole body was wrapped in an indescribable killing intent and fighting spirit. The first attack of the World Cavalry Division was different from the attack of other armies, divisions, and regiments. They rarely differentiated between the main attack and the auxiliary attack. Whenever they encountered an enemy, they would attack together and kill fiercely. Facing 5,000 enemies, they would also send out the whole division. Facing 10,000 enemies, they would still send out the whole division. This time, facing 30,000 enemies, they still chose to send out the whole army. Moreover, before they set out, they had sent people to inform the nearby Tatar division to quickly circle around the enemy's rear. They could not let the enemy escape. Before the battle had even begun, the 1st Cavalry Division had already made a fable. The enemy would definitely not be a match for them, and they would definitely lose. This was where their heroic spirit came from. After the division commander Tian who gave the order, the 5 regiment commanders led their soldiers to prepare for battle. While the other regiments were checking their horses and weapons, the 3rd regiment was praying to the heavens. With regiment commander Hu Bo at the lead, they were the first to kneel on the ground, facing the direction where Tuachuo Buhua had died. Tuachuo Buhua had been surrounded by the Wara army after being broken by the 5-star army, and had died after being hit by over 50 arrows. When the news came back, the 6th young master had said that he would definitely take revenge. This was why Hu Bo and the other Tatar tribesmen had decided to surrender. The majority of the members of the 3rd Regiment were the 30,000 elite soldiers under Tuachuo Buhua. When they had chosen to join the 5-star army, one of the most important requirements was that one day, they would be allowed to take revenge for Tuachuo Buhua. On this point, Yang Chendong had also expressed his agreement. Chapter 983. Now that the opportunity had presented itself, they naturally had to inform Tuachuo Buhua of this news. After the ceremony, the 3rd Regiment commander Hu Bo stood up and raised his saber, shouting to the Wala cavalry behind him, "Brave warriors, charge with me. Avenge the great Khan. Kill, kill, kill." At this moment, shouts and roars filled the skies above the 1st Cavalry Division. 10 li away, in the midst of the charging Wala cavalry, General Mutuo couldn't help but shiver. A chill surged through his entire body. This caused him to habitually look around, but he didn't find any signs of the enemy. The sun hung high in the sky, shining down on people's bodies, giving them a scorching feeling. He chased away the chill. However, half an hour later, the same feeling appeared again. Just as the army was advancing, the scouts at the front suddenly reported that a large number of cavalry soldiers wearing the 5-star army uniform had appeared. There were about 10,000 of them. "You're here to seek death? Then I'll grant you your wish. Come, charge." When he heard that there were 10,000 enemies, Mu Tua's eyes flashed with disdain. From his point of view, the Vala cavalry was the most outstanding and elite of all cavalry units. 10,000 against his 30,000, it was no different from throwing eggs at a rock. Since it was a fat piece of meat in his hands, he naturally would not let it go. With a shout, he gave the order for the entire army to charge forward. If Mu Tua had been more conservative at this time, and arranged the army into a defensive stance, even if they lost the following battle, it would not have been so tragic. His arrogance had caused him to make the wrong decision. The price of underestimating an opponent was always heavy. The facts proved this point. After another 15 minutes, the 1st Cavalry Division appeared with the red flag of the 5-star army. From afar, they were also covered in smoke and dust. The sound of iron hooves stomping on the ground reverberated in the ears of every cavalry soldier. None of them were new recruits, and in such a situation, not only did they not feel afraid, some even felt their blood boiling, as if their adrenaline had increased by quite a bit. The 1st Cavalry Division finally appeared in front of the 30,000 Walla cavalry. Both sides had no intention of slowing down, and under the gallop of the cavalry, the distance between them became shorter and shorter. 2 li, 1 li, 300 meters, 200 meters. When they were 200 meters away, the soldiers of the 1st Cavalry Division prepared to fire their arrows. They relied on their superb equestrian skills and superb archery skills to make all sorts of fancy movements. While the enemy could not lock onto them, they were able to lock onto the enemy. When they were only 100 meters away, tens of thousands of arrows were fired at the same time. They came from different angles and in tricky ways, shooting into the formation of the Vola cavalry. The Vola cavalry charging at the very front were all hit by the arrows and fell to the ground one by one. Ambushing with arrows was the basic skill of every soldier in the 1st Cavalry Division. For those who wanted to join, the archery requirements were extremely strict. The requirement was to be able to hit the target 90% of the time while moving at high speed. In order to reach this standard, they didn't know how many hard bows they had strung. In the end, when they finally mastered it, not only could they inflict heavy damage to the enemy, but it was also very rare for 2 arrows to hit the same target. Choosing the target according to the position allowed them to achieve the maximum military goal of inflicting heavy damage to the enemy during the first round of arrow attacks. In fact, they also succeeded. Compared to the scattered arrows shot by the Walla cavalry, and the uncertainty of the target, their first round of archery injured at least 1,000 of the enemy cavalry. Just this number of casualties alone was not comparable to other cavalry forces. After a round of archery, the cavalry charging at the front collided with each other. When the warriors of the 1st Cavalry Division rushed into the enemy cavalry with a sword and a shield in one hand, a one-sided massacre began. To be exact, these 16 words could describe the real scene on the battlefield. When they charged, they collapsed, they scattered, and when they scattered, and when they scattered, they fled. When the arrows cut into the formation of the Walla cavalry like a sharp knife, the originally neat formation of the Walla cavalry immediately collapsed. Many centurions and even kiliarchs who led the troops died tragically under the sharp knives of the 1st Cavalry Division before they could give the order to surround the enemy. Without their commander, the Vala cavalry began to fall into chaos. When the 2nd batch of soldiers from the 1st Heavenly Cavalry Division charged over, the Vala cavalry had already lost their formation. The only thing the Vala cavalry could do was either wait for death or turn around and flee. In a cavalry charge, the most effective way to exert one's full strength was to continuously charge. Once there was no one to protect you on your left and right, it was likely to be the moment your life would end. So any experienced cavalry knew that once the companions on his left and right disappeared, it was time for him to escape. Under the iron law, the Walla cavalry that was disrupted retreated and quickly collided with the Walla reinforcements behind them. After a short period of chaos, the soldiers of the 1st Cavalry Division arrived. The scene repeated itself again. Collapse, scatter, chaos, escape. In the chaos, most of the attacks of the Walla cavalry were blocked by the shields. When the speed of the sword was not as fast as the enemy, and occasionally the sword would be blocked by the shields, more and more Walla cavalry were killed on their horses. More and more Walla cavalry began to show fear in their eyes and began to retreat. The main force of the Walla army behind them was also greatly affected. They could not even display half of their usual combat power. General Muter in the middle of the army was surprised to find that the situation was completely different from what he had imagined. Even with such an advantage in numbers, they were still retreating. The situation had reached an irreversible situation. No matter how he gave orders, no matter how he shouted, it was impossible to reverse the situation. The soldiers of the 1st Cavalry Division who rushed into the enemy camp were like wolves in a flock of sheep. While they swung their swords and slashed at the enemy, they enjoyed the same treatment as the soldiers of the Cold Front. Equipped with 7-star crossbows, they continuously raised their sleeves and fired arrows at the Walla cavalry who were fleeing. Amidst the sounds of arrows, one by one, the Walla cavalry that blocked the way fell off their horses. This scene increased the enemy's chances of defeat, and the morale of the Walla cavalry fell to the lowest point. Muter's 30,000 cavalrymen were not lacking in individual combat power. Some of them had even fought with the elite cavalrymen of Tua Buhua before. They could be said to have rich battle experience. But the moment they faced the 1st Cavalry Division, they still felt a sense of powerlessness. It was like a 3-year-old child facing an adult. No matter how courageous you were, in the face of great strength, you still could not be a match. The front army was defeated, the middle army retreated, and the Walla rear army that was rushing over did not even have the chance to touch the sleeves of the 1st Cavalry Division before they frantically retreated with the main army. At this moment, the Walla cavalry was already dizzy from the beating, and there was only one word in their mind: escape. Only by escaping would they have a chance to regroup and fight again. This was not only the thought of the ordinary soldiers, but also the main commander of the army, Muter, also had the same thought. Without fully estimating the strength of the enemy, the Walla cavalry that had lost the initiative could not organize an effective resistance formation. As the saying goes, a defeated army is like a landslide. No matter how many troops you have, once the chaos was set, the more soldiers there were, the greater the momentum of the defeat and the more irreversible it would be. Just like the Walla cavalry now, as if they were being chased by someone, the 30,000 cavalrymen retreated faster than when they came. The Tatar division had already galloped behind the Walla army. Gu Shan, who was already a regiment commander, looked at the scene in front of him with a shocked expression and said, "This is too powerful. They didn't even have the ability to resist and they retreated like this. Is this still the powerful Walla cavalry that people are talking about?" The Tatar division commander Su He, who was riding beside Gu Shan, also felt his scalp tingling when he saw the Walla cavalry constantly retreating without the slightest ability to fight back. While he was impressed by the might of the world's 1st Cavalry Division, he was also worried about his upcoming mission. Originally, one side had 30,000 people, and the other side only had 10,000 people. Even if the side with more soldiers would definitely lose, but no matter what, they could still hold on. In this way, he could lead the Tatar division to cut in from the rear and launch a pincer attack on the Walla cavalry from both sides. The reality was that the Walla cavalry couldn't even withstand a single blow, or it could be said that the 1st Cavalry Division was too brave and didn't even give the Walla soldiers a chance to fight back. Now, these defeated soldiers were flying towards them. How could they block them? In the face of a cavalry that had completely lost their fighting spirit and had already retreated in defeat, anyone who stood in their way would have to bear extremely heavy pressure. Su He was naturally clear about this. Next, he had to order the Tatar division to move away from the main road and attack from the left and right flanks to kill as many enemies as possible and capture as many captives as possible. From the beginning to the end, Mudhole didn't even fight with the soldiers of the 1st Cavalry Division, and was constantly surrounded by the army and forced to retreat. When he saw the 5-star army appear from afar, he broke out in a cold sweat. If it was a normal time, he would consider what formation to use to attack or find the enemy's weak point. But now, the army was only constantly retreating, and no one would listen to his orders. The only thing he could do was to retreat with the army. As for how heavy the casualties would be after being blocked by the 5-star army, it was no longer something he could consider or change. Just like that, the Walla cavalry paid the price of heavy casualties and charged towards the arrows of the Tatar cavalry division. Countless cavalrymen and horses were shot and fell to the ground on the battlefield. Next, the 1st Cavalry Division and the Tatar division joined forces and madly charged for more than 10 miles until there were too many captives kneeling in front and behind them. Only then did they have to give up the chase and turn around to clean up the battlefield. On the battlefield where close to 50,000 cavalrymen charged, the battle ended in just a little over 2 hours. Everything was like a joke. One side was brave and invincible, while the other side was powerless. After spending a full 8 hours, the battlefield was cleaned up at night and the results were tabulated. In one battle, they killed more than 4,000 enemies and captured more than 20,000. In the end, only Mutuo escaped the battlefield with 5,000 cavalrymen. For this, the 5-star army paid a very small price. The number of casualties didn't even reach 50. This battle fully displayed the invincibility of the 1st Cavalry Division. Even Division Commander Tian, who couldn't help but have a victorious smile on his face. He knew that not long after, his epaulet would be changed from 24 cents to a golden pea. As for Mutuo, even if the 5-star army stopped chasing, he still ran with his 5,000 cavalrymen for more than 10 miles before stopping. He had no choice but to stop. After running for so long, he was tired and had no energy left to run. No one is chasing us, right? Mutuo, jumped off his horse and casually sat on the ground. He still had a guilty expression as he looked at the darkness behind him. There shouldn't be anyone chasing after us. We can't hear the sound of iron hooves, one of the 1,000-man commanders said with lingering fear as he glanced behind him. Chapter 984. It's good that they didn't chase after us. It's good that they didn't chase after us. At this moment, Mu Tuo felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders, and he no longer looked like the brave general of World of Wara. Finally safe, Mu Tuo panted for a while before calming down. Then, he called a few of the Kiliarchs who escaped with him over and asked, "How many enemies do you think there are this time?" "About 20,000, I think." A straightforward Chiliarch blurted out without thinking. As soon as he said that, Mu Tuo's face showed a very serious expression, and he seemed a little unhappy. "I think there are at least 40,000. Another Chiliarch noticed the change in Mu Tuo's expression and quickly expressed his opinion. "I think there are 70 to 80,000, or else how could our 30,000 army be defeated so quickly?" As soon as the number of 40,000 was mentioned, another Chiliarch voiced a different opinion. Until now, Mu Tuo's expression became a lot friendlier. "I think there are about 70 to 80,000. We fought for 2 days and 2 nights in this battle, and in the end, we damaged more than 50,000 of the enemy's cavalry. After that, we still had to retreat because we didn't have enough troops. Isn't that right, everyone?" This was a blatant lie. Mu Tuo's usual personality was not like this, but he could not explain himself to Yes Hen after being defeated, so this was the only way he could come up with to explain everything. This way, not only would he not be at fault, but he would also be rewarded. The general had set the tone, and the other Kiliarchs did not want to be implicated by the defeat, so after a slight hesitation, everyone agreed to this fabricated fact. Soon, they called the Kiliarchs and Centurions to agree on the same statement. A great defeat was described as a great victory, and this was considered a kind of art of war. Outside the beginning city, the attack was still ongoing. This was already the 12th consecutive siege. After being heavily damaged by the large-scale destruction weapons on the first day of the siege, the infantry commander General Korban changed his attack strategy. Each time, he would send at most 2,000 men to each side of the city wall, and with such a scale, both sides fought back and forth, with no clear winner. There were even a few times when they almost reached the top of the city wall. Under the repeated hope, Korban grew more and more tormented between hope and disappointment. When he had nothing else to do, he made a conclusion and was surprised to discover a fact. The defense of the 5-star army seemed to be sometimes strong and sometimes weak. Every 3 days, the defense would weaken, and then it would strengthen day by day. On the 4th day, there would be another fact that the defense would become weak and strong. Korban could not understand why things had turned out this way. The only thing he could do was to continue attacking the city, paying a heavy price while trying to whittle away at the enemy's strength. Didn't the scout already say that? The enemy in the beginning city only had 40,000 soldiers. Even if he had to sacrifice 2 or even 3 of them, the final victory would still belong to him. Korban's is a good idea. But he did not know that the reason why he felt that the defense was strong and weak was because the soldiers guarding the city changed every 3 days. In the 12th day of the siege, the 5-star army had changed 4 batches of veteran soldiers, and the new soldiers who had experienced the 3-day siege had completed the process of metamorphosing into veterans, and then reported to the new Second Army. And from start to finish, the new Second Army's main force had not been mobilized. Unable to know the specific situation in the city, Korban could only probe again and again. Then, another 10 days passed, and the 5-star army defending the city was still weak and strong at times, and no one could find the reason. Korban, however, was surprised to find that he only had 10,000 men left. After 22 days of siege, the original 50,000 soldiers were either dead or injured, and now there were only 10,000 who were healthy. He finally had to find Prime Minister Alip and ask for reinforcements. He did not expect the Korban to be so difficult to attack. At first, he said that he would take the outer city in 3 days, but it had only been 3 days, and not only had he not taken it, but he also did not have enough soldiers to attack the city. This made Alip very unhappy, but he could not think of a better way at the moment, so he had no choice but to replace the 20,000 cavalry with infantry and hand them over to Korban. Just as Alip was done with this, another message came, and the 30,000 cavalry sent by the Wara had returned. But only 5,000 of the 30,000 returned, which meant that they might have been defeated when they attacked North Desert City. Muther had returned. He could have returned a few days earlier, but in order to show that he had indeed fought a hard battle with the 5-star army, he deliberately delayed it. This time, he was summoned by Yeshen for questioning as soon as he returned to the camp. What happened? I gave you 30,000 cavalry, and you only brought back 5,000 men. I want an explanation. Yeshen's eyes were cold, and if Muther answered wrong, he would raise his butcher's knife and start a massacre. Thinking that it was fortunate that he had prepared in advance, Muther tried his best to act as calm as possible and told the lie that he had made up earlier. After he was done, he even put on a mournful expression and said, "Lord Leader, this is all because the scouts' information was not good. That's why we suffered such heavy losses." 80,000 5-star army, where did they come from? Yeshen, who was frowning after hearing Muther's explanation, was also stunned. Since when did North Desert City have so many 5-star army? If that was the case, 30,000 against 80,000, and 5,000 managed to escape after wiping out 50,000 of the enemy's cavalry, it was not a small victory. I don't know. Mutuo shook his head innocently. Then, according to what he thought before, he pretended to be aggrieved and said, "Leader, do you think the war god has transferred the main army to North Desert City and left some infantry in the beginning city?" Oh. As the saying goes, one sentence can wake a person from a dream. He was instantly woken up by such a sentence. Thinking about it carefully, this idea was not unreasonable. More importantly, there was no other explanation other than this. Okay, I understand. I will immediately meet with Apu and tell him the details. In order to shirk responsibility, Muther came up with this excuse to facilitate Yeshen and Apu's meeting again, and at the same time, it sped up the destruction of the allied army. In the main tent, Yeshen invited Apu and told him what happened to Muther, as well as his conjecture. "Prime Minister, it seems that our previous estimation was wrong. The cavalry of the 5-star army is not in the beginning city. They only left behind infantry. This can also explain why we failed to attack the city and why we were defeated when we sent troops to North Desert City." Yeshen's words were reasonable, and the smart Apu was also misled into making the same judgment. Yes, that should be the case. It's just that the walls of the beginning city are high and strong, even if they are infantry. What can we do if we can't break in? Seeing that Apu agreed with his judgment, Yeshen was very proud. In his eyes, Apu was very smart, and even he agreed with his judgment. There should be no 5-star army cavalry in the city. If that's the case, the previous military plan should also be changed. Prime Minister, this leader knows that you did your best, but as you said, when the war god built the beginning city, he probably considered the safety of the city, so it won't be easy to attack them. Since that's the case, we need to think of another way. Think of another way. Apu's expression didn't change, but he was very curious. But I don't know what the leader has in mind. I have some ideas, but I don't know if it will work or not. I still need to ask the Prime Minister to give me some pointers. Yeshen chuckled. He did have a bold idea, and he wanted to show it off in front of Apu. The leader's idea can't be wrong. I'd like to hear the details. Apu saw that Yeshen was keeping him in suspense, so he simply satisfied the other party's request and said these words with a pleading expression. Apu's attitude was so humble that Yeshen was full of pride. He immediately laughed and said, "This is what I think. Attacking the beginning city with ladders is far from enough. Since that's the case, it's better to go to Baiming and get some cannons. With the help of these cannons, attacking the beginning city will be twice the result with half the effort. When the beginning city is in danger, the 5-star army cavalry in North Desert City will have to reinforce them. At that time, we only need to attack them halfway, and our plan will be successful. The encirclement is fake, and attacking the reinforcements is real?" Apu's brain turned very quickly, and he immediately pointed out the core of the problem. No. Attacking the reinforcements is real, and attacking the beginning city is also real. When the time comes, no matter which side makes progress, it will be our victory. Yeshen first shook his head, then nodded, and his eyes were full of smiles. This time, Apu didn't answer immediately. He was thinking about the feasibility of the matter. Thinking about the fact that they still had the advantage in terms of military strength, it was possible for them to start a war on both sides. Thus, he wanted to agree. However, there was a bigger problem in front of him. Will the Northern Ming army give us cannons? We don't want their cannons. Before, we found hundreds of cannons on the battlefield, but we didn't have enough ammunition. Now, we just want them to hand over the cannons. And we don't want them for free. We can trade with them. We can use the extra warhorses in the army to trade. This is what they need, so there won't be a problem. Yeshen said confidently. Warhorses for ammunition, but we don't have that many warhorses. As Arab spoke, he thought back to the 20,000 cavalry that he had just arranged to attack the city. Could it be that he had also planned to use his 20,000 warhorses first? Chapter 985. Yeshen chuckled and looked at Alip with ill intentions and said, "Prime Minister, I heard that in order to capture the first city, you have ordered 20,000 cavalry to be converted into infantry. Doesn't that mean that you have 20,000 warhorses? Of course, I won't take it for free. I've heard that there's a large horse farm in the south of the beginning city. There are hundreds of thousands of warhorses in there. After we take down the city, I'll allow your army to pick 40,000 warhorses first. How about that?" As if worried that Alip would not agree, Yeshen directly offered double the price and then looked at the other party with an expectant look. Yeshen believes that this price will be able to move the other party. Alip only pondered for a moment before he nodded and agreed. These 20,000 war horses are indeed useless now. If that's the case, it's better to take them out to make a deal. Once they succeed, they will get more. Moreover, he also hopes to get the help of artillery. Otherwise, he really doesn't know when they will be able to capture the first city. After convincing Alip, Yeshen called one of the 4 generals, Ting Shu, and asked him to take 10,000 people to Sanbuchuan City to make a deal. Remember, 20,000 war horses in exchange for all the artillery shells in the city. Yes, Prime Minister. But what if they don't trade with us? Ting Shu asked. Tell them that the artillery is used to deal with the first city. Now we are all grasshoppers on the same rope. If the 5-star army is fine this time, I'm afraid that they will inevitably come to the 5-star army to settle the score. If they don't want to see such a result, it's better for them to obediently make a deal with us. And if they are unmoved, tell them that we will ally with Yang Chendong. They can think about the consequences themselves. Yeshen pulled a long face and said in an unfriendly tone. Ting Shu left, but to his surprise, the deal went very smoothly. It's probably because the person in charge of Sanbuchuan City is now Deng Chang. Since the red barbarian cannons were no longer available, there was no need for him to keep the cannonballs. He might as well give them to the Ministry of War in exchange for war horses. The two sides were trading under the city gate. When the 20,000 horses were involved, it caused quite a commotion. Many people in Sanbulachuan knew about it. Shi Wanshan and the other generals also knew about it. However, they were under house arrest and couldn't do anything. The members of the security bureau in Sanbulachuan City heard about this matter. Considering the importance of this matter, they used the radio station to send the news to Shicheng. When Yang Chendong saw this news, Wang Shan not only sent this telegram, but also one about Hai Wu Division. He Gong, the commander of the 5th Division of the Navy's Cold Front, called. They had already passed through the Liaodu area and were now heading towards the first city. It's better to come at the right time. Yang Chendong looked at the telegram, which could be described as timely rain, and laughed heartily. Since the other party wanted to play with firearms, then he would let everyone know who the originator of firearms was. In front of Shicheng, Yes Hen and Ali Pu began to mobilize their troops. Each of them sent out 50,000 cavalry. A total of 100,000 cavalry were stationed in the northwest of Shicheng. They were waiting for the arrival of the 5-star Army's main cavalry. But at the same time, thousands of miles away in the south, a force of 6,000 cavalry appeared in the Shirha River in the north of Ili. They were carrying the banner of the 5-star Army, with General Narasong as their commander. They were quietly crossing the river. This was a surprise attack that Yang Chendong had arranged before the war. They crossed the mountains and came to the periphery of Ili from another direction. Next, they would launch an iron-blooded attack to take revenge for Ali Pu's attack on Shicheng. The telegram operator put away the telegram, came to Narasong and saluted. Deputy Division Commander Narasong, the 6th young master has called. He agreed to let us enter Ili and attack their hinterland. He asked us to create enough momentum. Call back the 6th young master. We promise to complete the mission. Na Rizong laughed excitedly. He turned around to look at the cavalry troops crossing the river and shouted, "Brothers, let's work harder. In at most 2 days, we will be able to pull out our sabers and slaughter them all." Ha ha ha. Saihan Mountain. This mountain was once the dividing line between the 5-star Army and the Baiming Army. Ever since the allied forces of Walla and Ili appeared, it became an abandoned land. Looking from afar, one could still see the desolate appearance of the mountain. "General, should we rest here for a night before continuing? Our brothers are tired from being so careful." A Chiliarch walked to General Ting Shu with a fawning expression. Ting Shu rode on his horse and looked at the continuous drizzle above his head. When he saw the carriages loaded with cannonballs moving in a small line, he nodded. "That's good too. Our brothers have been rushing through the night for the past few days and are indeed tired. Let's let everyone have a good night's rest. However, pass down the order that the waterproofing of the carriages must be done well. We must not allow water to enter the cannonballs." "General, don't worry." "Thank you, General." The Chiliarch thanked him happily. Then, he went down to pass down the military order. For a moment, cheers could be heard from the 10,000 troops. They were not afraid of rushing through the journey. However, they were worried about carrying gunpowder that could explode if they were not careful. Seeing that they were about to reach the first city and with the continuous drizzle, they might as well stop and have a good rest. They would continue to move forward when the weather cleared up. After the general gave the order to rest, the cavalry soldiers took out their tents. White tents sprung up like bamboo shoots after the rain at the foot of Saihan Mountain. The 5-star Army had originally built a road here. As the roadbed was higher than the ground, it would not be a problem even if it drizzled. Therefore, it became a good place for the Walla cavalry to rest. Just as the tents appeared one after another, 2 scouts from the 5-star Army who were hiding in the distance quietly retreated and reported the news to their commander, Ding Shan. When the first city was closed, Ding Shan and the scouting group he led did not enter the city. Instead, they stayed outside and were responsible for gathering all the information outside. When the 5th Marine Division appeared on the grassland, Commander Ding Shan personally led people to welcome them and pulled them into an extremely safe jungle. Now, Ding Shan and the commander of the 5th Marine Division, He Gong, stood in the temporary military tent and looked at the map. They were thinking about how to complete the mission given by the 6th young master. The 5th Marine Division was an army fully equipped with firearms. It had 4 regiments and 1 division under its command, totaling 8,400 people. Because when He Gong received the order, he was still maintaining the security of the Korean province. When he came, he left the 4 regiments behind. However, even if there were only 3 regiments and 1 division, the strength of their combat power was still shocking. Speaking of which, the Navy's Cold Front Division and the Army's Cold Front Division both had their own merits. For example, the Army's Cold Front Division was required to learn how to ride a horse in addition to fighting on land. On the other hand, the Navy's Cold Front Division was required to know how to swim in addition to fighting on land. However, it was undeniable that both sides had good abilities in fighting on land. After receiving the mission from the telegram to eliminate the 10,000 cavalry sent by the Walla to collect gunpowder, He Gong had been waiting for an opportunity to appear. If the Walla cavalry were all on horseback, it wouldn't be easy to annihilate them all without any signs of life. And once a large number of cavalries escape, I don't know if Commander Ding Shan can stop them. In the tent, He Gong asked Ding Shan with a serious face. Although he wanted to say that he would do his best, but there was no room for carelessness in war. Ding Shan could only shake his head. Commander He, our scouting group only has 2,000 people. If it is within this number, we are confident that we can stop them. But if too many of them escape, I'm afraid there is nothing we can do. I see. He Gong took a deep breath. Then if we want to complete the mission, we can only wait for them to stop. Although He Gong said that, he did not have much confidence in his heart. After all, 4 hours ago, he received news that the Walla cavalry was about to arrive at Mount Saihan. From there to the outskirts of Beginning City, it would only take more than a day's journey if they hurried. Perhaps in order to return to camp as soon as possible, they would not stop at all and would not create the most suitable opportunity for him to annihilate the enemy. He Gong thought about how the 6th young master had high hopes for Hai Wushi. If he couldn't complete the mission well, how would he have the face to meet the 6th young master again? He Gong's gaze fell on the map again. For the sake of the mission, he had no choice but to take the risk. Report. At this moment, the newly sent scout outside the tent returned with the latest news. Ting Shu's 10,000 cavalries and dozens of carriages of artillery shells had stopped at the foot of Mount Saihan due to the continuous rain. They stopped. After hearing the report, He Gong's eyes lit up with excitement. Then, he laughed and said, "Good, good, it's good that they stopped. Commander Ding, it's time for us to show our skills." "That's right, Commander He. Everything will go according to the previous plan." Ding Shan was also very excited. Cavalries were afraid of moving. If that happened, it would be too difficult to lock onto the target, increasing the difficulty of annihilating them altogether. However, if they stopped, everything would be another story. A division commander and a commander immediately ordered the troops to set off. Their target was the foot of Mount Saihan. At the foot of Mount Saihan, the 10,000 cavalries led by Ting Shu did not know that they had become the target and prey. The light rain outside had turned into moderate rain. After rushing for days, the moment the tents were set up, they rested inside. Many of them had even slept during the day. As the general leading the troops, Ting Shu did not have the intention to reprimand them. The soldiers were working very hard, and it was good to have a chance to rest more. Moreover, this place was not far from Beginning City. He had 10,000 cavalries, so he did not think that there would be any danger in resting here. Even if the 5-star army appeared, he would still be able to fight back. Moreover, there was no information that indicated that the main force of the 5-star army would be here, so he had nothing to worry about. Chapter 986. In the rain, the C5 Division soldiers dressed in the same raincoats appeared near Mount Saihan according to plan. The heavy rain increased the secrecy of their movements, but at the same time, it also increased the difficulty of their march. They wore rain boots and raincoats to keep the rain off their heads. 3 regiments and 1 battalion, more than 6,000 soldiers arrived at the foot of the mountain according to the original plan. They could already see the resting Walla camp from afar. "Commander, they didn't discover our presence." Can we continue with the plan? A company commander in charge of reconnaissance came to Higong and asked for instructions. Yes, order the 5 battalions of the 1st Regiment to spread out in different directions toward the enemy camp. The 2nd and 3rd Regiments, plus the battalions, stay at the periphery and eliminate any enemies that escape. In addition, go and inform Commander Ding Shan. Tell him to make preparations. We must not let any fish escape the net. Higong nodded his head with a dignified expression. Whether or not they could complete the 6th young master's mission depended on this. The regiment that received the order began to rapidly approach the target in the rain. They first crept closer to the enemy camp. When they were only 300 meters away, they could still see clearly even in the rain. Then, they switched to the standard military movement and slowly approached the enemy camp. How to approach the target as close as possible without disturbing the enemy was something that every cold warrior had to do. All kinds of military movements were skillfully carried out one by one. The distance between them and the enemy camp was getting closer and closer. When they were only 200 meters away from the enemy camp, the 95 style in their hands could completely unleash a powerful effect. Only then did they stop one by one. Then, they spread out in a long snake formation. The 2,000 soldiers were divided into 5 groups and surrounded most of the enemy camp's tents. Among them, the area near the carriages was the closest. Prepare the rocket launchers. Dozens of carriages were about 100 meters away from them. From time to time, they could see Walla cavalry patrolling the surroundings. A regiment commander issued an order, but the rain covered his voice. The sound of the rain could cover up the voices of the people, but it couldn't cover up the earth-shattering explosion that followed. A single rocket launcher streaked across the rain and hit one of the transport carriages. The fire exploded, and under the chain reaction, the gunpowder in the carriages was ignited one after another. One after another, huge roars and explosions were heard. Amidst the sky full of explosions, the carriages were torn apart. With the support of enough gunpowder, a corner of the entire camp was instantly flattened. It was estimated that at least a few hundred Vola cavalry nearby were directly swallowed up. At least a few thousand warhorses were startled and began to run wildly in all directions. Even if there were tents set up in front of them, they couldn't stop them from running wildly. In the process, who knew how many tents were overturned, and who knew how many Vola cavalry who came out of the camp to check out the situation were trampled over. Chaos began. Attack! The first leader gave the order, and the 5 fire dragons began their one-sided massacre. Those Walla cavalry who came out of the camp in panic became targets one by one. They were hit by bullets, and blood spilled on the ground. Outside, there were horses roaring and rampaging. Inside, there were bullets passing by, taking away people's lives. Ting Shu, who was in the main tent, panicked. At this moment, his face was pale, and he looked nervous. He suddenly reached out and grabbed a captain who was running in front of him and asked, "What's going on? What happened?" "General, I don't know, everything is a mess. Mrs. Qian's face was full of panic. The fire just now was too dazzling. Under the deafening sound, her ears were still a little deaf, and she couldn't hear what others were saying. Don't panic, the explosives are destroyed. This is clearly done by the 5-star army. We have to find a way to kill our way out and tell the leader about this. In this way, gather the cavalry. Their main force is either blocked in the first city or North Desert City. It is impossible for any army to appear here." Ting Shu was worthy of being one of the 4 generals chosen by Walla. Soon, he became clear-headed, and then he kept shouting to reorganize the army's morale. The most important thing for an army was the stability of the army's morale. As long as the morale of the army was still there, they would have the power to fight and have the possibility of turning defeat into victory. Ting Shu's shout quickly gathered several captains, dozens of captains, and a cavalry team of 5,000 to 6,000 people began to gather. When these people found their horses and stood with their swords, Ting Shu, as the main general, didn't have the slightest hesitation, and he didn't have the intention to wait for the others. He looked at the direction of the first city and swung his sword. The target is the first city, all troops attack. A regiment of cold front warriors used a surprise attack to stop the enemy that was twice their number. When nearly 6,000 Walla cavalry rushed out of the camp, the real resistance began. With Commander Higong as the head, the 2nd Regiment, the 3rd Regiment, and the division's battalion, a total of 4,400 people appeared in front of Tingshu. Just like the direction of Tingshu's attack was the first city, the direction of Higong's defense was also the direction of the first city. The two sides inevitably met, and then there was a burst of gunfire. One by one, the Walla cavalry were overturned from their horses and were hit by bullets. Their bodies were stained with blood. The brave and good cavalry didn't even see the shadow of their opponents. They fell from their horses and went to see the Tingri that they believed in. The sound of gunfire burst out, and the cavalry fell on the charging road with blood. However, at least half of the cavalry rushed out of the encirclement. This was the advantage of the cavalry. Their speed was extremely fast, especially when they had a clear target. They could completely ignore the blockade of guns and rush out. Fortunately, Commander Higong had already anticipated this possibility. Higong had set up a total of 3 blockades. Just now, the enemy only broke through the 2nd Regiment's blockade. Then, the cavalry rushed out and met the 3rd Regiment's soldiers. Gunfire sounded again and countless lives were lost. Under the 2nd blockade, more than 3,000 cavalry left half of the corpses. When they rushed to the 3rd blockade, Tingshu had less than 2,000 cavalry with him. Commander Higong didn't hesitate to lead the division's battalion to open fire. Among them, there were as many as 6 machine guns. They formed a bullet net and blocked the direction of the enemy's advance. One of the machine guns was aimed at Tingshu and his warhorse. Unlike the clash between cavalry, Tingshu had close to 100 bodyguards around him. They could very well protect the commander's safety. However, under such a blockade of gunfire, the effect of the bodyguards was negligible. Especially after the cavalry formation was disrupted one after another, there were not many bodyguards who could block in front of Tingshu. When faced with the gunfire of the 95 machine gun, this one of the 4 generals that Yeshen thought highly of was locked on by the gun muzzle. The bullets mercilessly shot into his body, causing Tingshu, who was still lying on the horse, to tremble involuntarily. Just like the old saying, no matter how good one's martial arts were, one was still afraid of a kitchen knife. In the face of bullets that were many times more lethal than kitchen knives and bullets, the so-called kung fu became a joke. There wasn't even time for you to show off your knife skills. General Tingshu was shot and fell off the horse. Even at the last moment before his death, his gaze was still looking in the direction of First City. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. Tingshu was dead, but there were still many cavalry who rushed out of the blockade. There were about 1,000 of them. Their lives would be left to the reconnaissance group at the last layer of defense. The leader of the reconnaissance group, Ding Shan, had already gathered 2,000 soldiers under his command and was ready for battle. When he saw nearly 1,000 panicked enemy cavalry rushing out, he did not hesitate to wave his sword to meet them. The final massacre began. Those who could become scouts were originally outstanding talents in the army. It was no exaggeration to say that in order to gather the 2,000 people of the reconnaissance group, Ding Shan's efforts were no less than that of Division Commander Tian Hu of the 1st Cavalry Division. Therefore, when the morale, ability, individual quality, and number of soldiers were inferior, the result of 2,000 against less than 1,000 was already destined. The 3-3 military formation played a great role. One by one, the Walla cavalry was entangled, surrounded, and killed. After more than 2 hours, the battlefield returned to calm. The 10,000 Walla cavalry, under the strict military plan, did not escape in the end. According to the previous agreement, they still had important things to do next. Higong and others did not need to take captives, so some of the injured and some of the surrendered Walla cavalry would eventually face a result that they had to face whether they wanted to or not, and that was death. Not a single one of the 10,000 Walla cavalry managed to escape. Even the General Tingshu died in battle. Division Commander Higong and Commander Ding Shan looked at the expected result. The two of them breathed a sigh of relief. In the end, they did not disappoint the sixth young master's hope and completed the mission. Okay, immediately send power to the sixth young master. The matter is done, we will continue to complete the mission according to the plan. After giving the order to the electrical operator, He Gong looked at Ding Shan and said, Commander Ding, the uniforms and other things are ready, right? It's all ready. Ding Shan stood at attention and replied. Good, then we will proceed according to the plan. He Gong nodded and began to instruct the soldiers to dig a large hole. This time, it was not an easy task to bury 10,000 enemy corpses. More importantly, while burying the corpses, they had to mix in some of the Northern Ming Army's uniforms. That's right, they had to frame the Walla Army and create a false impression that the Baiming Army was the doing of the Walla Army to destroy their so-called alliance. The rain continued for 2 days and 1 night, and finally, it cleared up again. The attack under the beginning city began again. After a series of unsuccessful attacks, Korban helplessly went to Prime Minister Arip and asked him where the Baiming Army's red coat cannons were transported to. You're tuning in to the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.